Chapter 978. Haha, that's true. This mister is merely a spectator. Grandmaster whose invitation is a little unreasonable. Therefore, I would like to ask Mister to reveal his identity. What is Mister's name and which faction do you come from? At the same time, another middle-aged man among the 10 also stepped forward with a smile. He looked at Xiao Yan with a face full of smiles. At the same time, a pair of sharp eyes were also constantly sizing up the latter. They were extremely curious about a person with such outstanding talent. For the northern region to be able to give birth to such a young rank 4 alchemist, they had to know the latter's identity and background. This was also to facilitate future negotiations. I am Xiao Yan. I have just arrived in the northern region and do not have any faction behind me. I am all alone. Xiao Yan smiled softly as he looked at the middle-aged man. He did not hide anything in his words. Of course, to him, there was nothing worth hiding. After these words were spoken, the remaining few people all looked at each other. Their eyes flickered slightly. No one knew what they were thinking in their hearts. In the crowd, the sloppy old man could not help but raise his eyebrows. Surprise flashed across his pair of bright old eyes. Haha, since Mister has come to the northern region, it is fate that we are able to meet. Today, the Alchemist Grand Competition between our 5 great clans will have to rely on Mr. Xiao Yan to uphold justice. Grandmaster Hu, who was the first to speak earlier, smiled and said to Xiao Yan with a kind expression. At the same time his voice sounded. His turbid eyes looked toward the 5 young men in the battleground who had each put away their medicinal cauldrons. It's fine. It's just a small matter. In any case, he was just passing by this place. There was no harm in playing a little. He could just treat it as a break on the way. As this thought flashed across his mind, Xiao Yan agreed. At this moment, each of the 5 people present was holding a pill in their hands. A rich pill fragrance permeated the air, and a thin layer of mist rose into the air. Mr. Xiao Yan is the role model of your younger generation. At such a young age, he's already a Tier 4 alchemist. Let's see if you still dare to think highly of yourselves in the future. Don't think that just because you've become a Tier 3 alchemist, no one can compare to you in this world. You have to know that there is always someone better than you. Today, Mr. Xiao Yan has taught you a very important lesson. While he was teaching the 5 people on the field a lesson, the other few clans continuously curled their lips. On the surface, he was indeed teaching the 5 young people a lesson. However, from Grandmaster Hu's words, it was likely that he was flattering this Mr. Xiao Yan. With regards to this, Xiao Yan naturally ignored it. Based on his own experience, he had long since lost interest in such words. Old fellow, are you really treating him as a fledgling brat? How foolish. Seeing that Xiao Yan was unmoved, the few middle-aged men could not help but secretly sneer in their hearts. At the same time, Grandmaster Hu's gaze landed on the young man in front of him. Liner, hand the medicinal pill in your hand to this Mr. Xiao Yan. The quality of the medicinal pills from the 5 of you will be judged by Mr. Xiao Yan. Hearing this, the 5 young people swept their gazes over each other. Their expressions were somewhat unfriendly. As for the other 4 people, under the signal of the elders behind them, they took a few steps forward and passed the pills in their hands to Xiao Yan. The appraisal of the pills only took a short few minutes. With Xiao Yan's current eyesight, he could basically see through the 5 Tier 3 pills at a glance. However, it was also because of this that Xiao Ying's heart began to feel somewhat hesitant. The characteristics of the 5 pills had already been completely grasped in his mind. However, the differences caused Xiao Yan to feel a trace of suspicion. In fact, he even felt that it was troublesome in his heart. This was because among the 5 pills, there was a pill whose medicinal strength had actually dissipated to a certain extent. This also meant that this pill had not just been refined. Instead, it had been refined long ago. However, no one knew when it had been swapped out. Although the medicinal strength within this pill had dissipated by a lot, due to its quality, its medicinal strength and effects were still above the other 4 pills. From this point alone, it could be seen that the original owner of this pill was not able to complete the refinement. As for the owner of this ammunition, it just so happened that it belonged to the young man from the faction that Grandmaster Hu belonged to. It could be said that this should be Grandmaster Hu's own masterpiece. To be able to refine such a high-quality pill, it was definitely not something that an ordinary Tier 3 alchemist could do. The 5 people present clearly did not possess this ability. Adding the origin of this pill, there was almost no need to think too much. Xiao Yan could be sure that this pill was refined by Grandmaster Hu. However, no matter who refined this pill, swapping the pill in the alchemy competition was already a violation of the rules. From the looks of it, Grandmaster Hu also knew that this junior from his family could not win against these 4 people, which was why he made such a move. However, no matter what, his actions had already violated the rules of the alchemy competition. On this point, Xiao Yan, who was also a Tier 4 alchemist, was unable to turn a blind eye to it. Therefore, cough cough, has Mr. Xiao Yan completed the appraisal? However, it was also at this moment that Grandmaster Hu suddenly coughed twice. His eyes flickered slightly as he looked at Xiao Yan. Once these words were spoken, the gazes of the other 4 clans involuntarily turned towards Grandmaster Hu. Their expressions carried some suspicion. Hearing this, Xiao Yan also nodded. His eyes narrowed as he said, choking with emotion, "Chi chi 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 xiao www. That's right, I have already completed the appraisal of these 5 pills. I already know the medicinal effect and quality of the pills." Haha, then this is undoubtedly the best. Mister, you must announce the medicinal effect and quality of the pills. You must not affect the fairness of this competition. Is that all right? The other 4 clans could not help but frown. The suspicion in their hearts grew even more. At the same time, somewhere in the crowd, a sloppy old man grinned at this moment, revealing a row of dense white teeth. He looked at Xiao Yan with a playful smile, as if he was waiting for the latter to announce the results. Within that pair of bright eyes, there was also a look of surprise at this moment. He also wanted to know what the results of Xiao Yan's announcement were like. The 5 pills are all Tier 3 pills. 4 are middle grade, 1 is high grade, and they are all complete pills. And this pill is... Xiao Yan slowly raised his hand, opened his palm, and exposed the pill refined by the young man from the Hu clan in the air. However... Chapter 979. Humph humph. Grandmaster Hu's old face revealed a satisfied smile as he watched the medicinal pill that he had in mind appear in front of everyone present. His gaze swept over Xiao Yan and looked at the other 4 clans. At this moment, their expressions were ugly. Obviously, they were not satisfied with this answer. Hee, looks like the winner of this alchemy competition is still my Hu clan. Since that's the case, then this old man will respectfully accept. The corner of Grandmaster Hu's mouth curled into a sneer as he pretended to cup his hands towards the crowd. Soon after, he looked at the young man from his clan and laughed. Linner, hurry up and take back the pills. These are all your spoils of victory. Hearing this, the young man also sneered. He took a step forward and arrived in front of Xiao Yan. He wanted to take his pill and the other 4 pills from his hands. According to the rules of their competition, the winner had the right to control the ownership of the other 4 pills. It could be said that this competition itself was a battle of plundering. The winner would take the pills, and the loser could only return in defeat. Their expressions were unwilling as they watched Hu Yonglin walk closer to Xiao Yan. The people from the 4 clans, including the other 4 young men, may feel unwilling in their hearts, but they could only grit their teeth and swallow it into their stomachs. But, please wait a moment. Just as Hu Yonglin was about to take the pill from Xiao Yan's hand, Xiao Yan flipped his palm and took the pill back into his hand. At the same time, he spoke to stop Hu Yonglin in front of him. In the crowd, the sloppy old man nodded with a strange smile on his face. In his heart he secretly said, "Not bad." Following that, his figure flashed and quietly disappeared into the crowd. Mr. Xiao Yan, what do you mean by this? Grandmaster Hu frowned and said in a low voice. With regards to the latter's voice, he actually felt a faint sense of uneasiness in his heart. Could it be that this brat would say something more? At the same time, the people from the other 4 clans and the surrounding passers-by also threw their gazes toward Xiao Yan. Their faces carried a doubtful expression while their hearts were extremely curious. Since the answer had already been announced, the victor should be Hu Yonglin. What was the meaning of Xiao Yan's action? Grandmaster Hu, you asked me what I mean. I think you should know the reason better than me. The quality of this pill is indeed the best among the 5 pills, but a lot of the medicinal strength has been consumed. This should be because it has been stored for too long. As everyone knew, the medicinal efficacy of a pill that had just been refined was extremely dense. This was also the reason why most people would choose to consume a pill immediately after it was refined. However, the pill at this moment was obviously not the case. Grandmaster Hu, what's going on? The other 8 people each took a step forward and looked at Grandmaster Who with a questioning expression. At the same time, the surrounding crowd also looked at Grandmaster Who with a strange gaze. Damn it. You're really a calf that's not afraid of a tiger. Being stared at by everyone, Grandmaster Who's old face suddenly became ashen. The muscles on his old face could not help but twitch slightly. However, he looked like he was speechless, as if he was looking for an excuse in his heart. After a long while, Grandmaster Who raised his old eyes and his gaze suddenly fell on Xiao Yan. His pair of turbid old eyes were filled with a gentle flame of anger. Humph, Mr. Xiao Yan, we've only met for the first time. There's no need for you to be so against us. You said that the medicinal strength of this pill was damaged. What a joke. How can a pill that was just refined from the medicinal cauldron be damaged? Grandmaster Who, do you mean that I'm telling the truth? Xiao Yan frowned and said in a deep voice. But what if this isn't a newly refined pill? You're saying that I've swapped the pill. Grandmaster Who's old face darkened and his expression was extremely displeased. At the same time, the other 8 rank 4 alchemists also stepped forward and came to Xiao Yan's side. They wanted to check the authenticity of the pill. Mr. Xiao Yan, I hope that you can hand over the pill to us. This is a matter between our 5 clans. If this pill is really as you said and the medicinal strength is damaged, this matter should be settled by us. Among the 8 people, a slightly older middle-aged man stepped forward and politely cupped his hands to Xiao Yan and said with a smile. On the other side, Grandmaster Who looked at the situation over here and his old face became even more gloomy. He did not expect that Xiao Yan would be so ignorant when he asked him to come forward to appraise the pill. He clearly knew that he did not have any power behind him, yet he still wanted to meddle in other people's business. Wasn't this no different from seeking death? At the same time, Xiao Yan also wore a smile on his face as he slowly extended the pill in his hand and handed it to the middle-aged man. Grandmaster Who, if this matter is really as Mr. Xiao Yan said, then I'm afraid that Grandmaster will have to give us a clear answer. The middle-aged man's face was cold and there was even some anger in his eyes. They had already held this kind of alchemy competition more than once. However, in the past, there would always be someone like Xiao Yan who interfered halfway. In the end, the Hu clan always won. However, they did not expect that Xiao Yan's appearance this time would break the norm. At the same time, it allowed the 4 clans to clearly see the Hu clan's methods. Swoosh. However, just as the words from the middle-aged man's mouth sounded, Grandmaster Who's body flashed. In a ghost-like manner, he instantly appeared among the few of them. He waved his large hand and grabbed the medicinal pill in Xiao Yan's hand. Humph, brat, the old me has been so polite to you. It is unexpected that you actually dare to slander the clan members of the old me in public, and say that we have swapped the medicinal pills. From the way I see it, the ones who have swapped the medicinal pills are you. A slightly angry voice was spat out from the old man's mouth. It was as though he had really suffered some grievances. At the same time, the speed of his descending hand did not slow at all. It looked as though he was about to grab the medicinal pill in his hand. However, it was also at this moment that... Buzz! A surging Do Chi wave swept out from within Xiao Yan's body. He did not use any Do technique. Merely the energy that seeped out was enough to easily push back the few people around him. Even Grandmaster Who had appeared in front of him at this moment, was pushed back. With just one attack, the 10 high-class Do D in the middle of the arena and the 5 young people were easily pushed back by over 10 steps by this energy wave. Only when they fell into the crowd did their bodies come to a stop in a somewhat miserable manner. The instant the 10 of them lifted their gazes, a shocked expression filled their eyes. They had never expected that this black-robed young man who appeared to be very young, not only possessed great spiritual strength, but even his Do Chi was also this strong. Chapter 980. After easily forcing back the few people, Xiao Yan's face did not have much of a change in expression. A pair of dark black eyes carried an icy cold gaze as they landed on Grandmaster Who's body. The icy cold gaze caused the latter's body to involuntarily tremble. His feet involuntarily took half a step back and his heart sank. It was unexpected that he had actually kicked an iron plate this time around. This kind of chi. Don't tell me that he is a 9-star Do D? Such a young 9-star Do D. How is this possible? Grandmaster Who was not the only one. Even the eyes of the 9 people around him were filled with the same shocked expression when they looked at Xiao Yan. This included the surrounding crowd. The expressions on their faces were also incomparably shocked. To be able to force back 10 elite Do-D with his own strength. Just what kind of identity did this black-robed young man have? Just how frightening was his cultivation? The background of this brat is definitely not simple. We must not become enemies with him. The people from the few clans could not resist looking at each other. All of them quietly nodded their heads. Although their relationship was usually not good, the strength of this black-robed young man was already sufficient to threaten their respective factions. Thus, they had no choice but to let this group of local tyrants form a group together. Of course, this group of people would not bother with Grandmaster Hu. It was likely that no one in this city would have a good impression of the latter. Ha ha ha, Mr. Xiao Yan is indeed young and promising. Not only is he a rank 4 alchemist, it is unexpected that even his cultivation is this strong. It really makes us feel ashamed. The middle-aged man who had extended his hand to Xiao Yan earlier stood up. He respectfully bowed and cupped his hands to Xiao Yan. If it was said that he only felt respect for Xiao Yan's identity as an alchemist earlier, at this moment, the latter's cultivation strength was the reason that caused him to lower his head. Seeing the middle-aged man act in this manner, other than Grandmaster Hu and the middle-aged man beside him, the others, including the surrounding people, respectfully bowed and cupped their hands to Xiao Yan. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yan coldly smiled and withdrew the powerful aura that he had released from his body. In this world, the only thing that could cause others to show respect to you was your own strength. Other than this, even if he was a rank 4 alchemist, he would not be able to threaten these people in front of him. After all, in comparison, the other party had a total of 10 rank 4 alchemists. As for 9-star Do-D, there was not a single one present. This was the reason why they were afraid of Xiao Yan. The one with the strongest cultivation among these 10 people was undoubtedly Grandmaster Hu. He was an advanced 8-star Do-D. This kind of cultivation could indeed be considered strong. However, an 8-star Do-D was far from enough in front of a 9-star Do-D. Of course, being a rank 4 alchemist, Grandmaster Hu was naturally able to attract a countless number of experts to step forward by relying on his charisma. However, in a situation where they were of the same class and the other party was a rank 4 alchemist, there was basically no one who would be willing to offend such an expert even if they were similarly a 9-star Do-D. Grandmaster Hu, you just said that I am slandering you. I wonder if you still think so now? Xiao Yan's eyes were icy cold as he stared at Grandmaster Hu. The corner of his mouth was lifted into a cold smile. Although he had withdrawn most of his aura, he did not let Grandmaster Hu off. When faced with such a person, one must either treat him with respect or suppress him. If he was given too much time to breathe, he would only think that others were afraid of him. At this moment, Grandmaster Hu's old face was solemn as he resisted the terrifying aura that came from Xiao Yan's body. Cold sweat continued to emerge from his forehead. His expression was gloomy and uncertain. The emotions in his heart were difficult to describe. If he was given another chance, he would definitely not provoke this seemingly harmless fellow in front of him. Who would have thought that a young black-robed man would actually possess such a great strength? Even he, who had trained for his entire life, was unable to compare with him. What was even more frightening was that the latter was also a 9-star Do-D on top of having a strong Do-Chi. This point was something that he did not dare to imagine in his heart. Little brother, this is the first time that we have met. Why do you need to be so ruthless? Leaving some leeway for each of us will make it easier for us to be friends in the future. Isn't this better? At this moment, Grandmaster Hu had completely scattered his original awe-inspiring manner. Hearing these words, he did not intend to continue pretending to be innocent. Friends? Is there a need for me to be friends with you? Breaking the rules of alchemists and using such despicable methods in an alchemist competition. Do you have the qualification to be an alchemist? Xiao Yan's disdainful cold smile fell. A thought passed through his mind and an even more frightening aura suddenly fell from above Grandmaster Hu's head. It was like Mount Tai was pressing down on him, causing the latter's body to instantly bend. Bang! Grandmaster Hu's body half knelt on the ground. His knees were embedded into the ground. The surrounding hard ground turned into a pile of stone powder with a bang. Ancestor! Grandfather! Seeing the old man kneel on the ground with a bang, the expressions of Hu Yonglin and the middle-aged man standing beside him instantly changed drastically. Hu Yonglin's gaze suddenly turned. His dense cold eyes instantly landed on Xiao Yan. His body shook and Do-Chi surged as he charged toward Xiao Yan. Bang! However, the moment Hu Yonglin moved, Xiao Yan randomly raised his hand. An invisible strength instantly struck Hu Yonglin's chest like a cannonball. Following a muffled bang sound, the latter's body instantly flew out and entered the crowd behind him. Noisy. A mere 3-star Do-D. This kind of strength was just like an ant in Xiao Yan's eyes. Brat. Don't be too arrogant when you do things. This is the Northern region, the world of the Northern Wasteland Hall. My Hu clan is a member of the Northern Wasteland Hall. If you dare to attack again, the Northern Wasteland Hall will not let you off. Just as Xiao Yan casually sent Hu Yonglin flying, the middle-aged man took a step forward. His expression was fierce and his tone was filled with threat as he cried out. Oh, you are a member of the Northern Wasteland Hall? Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes. He paused for a moment before asking in a questioning manner. Hearing Xiao Yan's questioning words, the middle-aged man rejoiced in his heart. Indeed, as long as one was in the northern region, anyone who heard of the Northern Wasteland Hall would be afraid. Humph, that's right. We are a member of the Northern Wasteland Hall. If you... Bang! This time around, however, Xiao Yan did not wait for the middle-aged man to finish speaking with a proud face. He flipped his hand and a dense white flame immediately agglomerated above the middle-aged man's head. It transformed into a large flaming hand and instantly smashed the middle-aged man's body until it exploded. Since you are a member of the Northern Wasteland Hall, there is even less need for me to show mercy. Chapter 981. After casually killing that middle-aged man, Xiao Yan's eyes turned around. His ice-cold gaze once again landed on Grandmaster Hu's body. The killing intent in his eyes was stern. Since they were people from the Northern Desolate Hall, Xiao Yan naturally did not need to mind when he attacked. Originally, he thought that these fellows would know how to stop after witnessing his strength. However, from the looks of it, it did not seem like what Xiao Yan had imagined. Brat, you should think carefully. It is not easy to kill the people from the Northern Desolate Hall. If you really kill us, the Northern Desolate Hall will definitely not let you off. Grandmaster Hu's heart immediately sank when he noticed Xiao Yan's extremely cold eyes. He only hoped that he could use the Northern Desolate Hall to intimidate the other party. Unfortunately, his thoughts were clearly wrong. The Northern Desolate Hall will not let me off if I kill you. But will they let me off if I don't kill you? Xiao Yan coldly laughed when he heard this. He lifted his hand and the flame above Grandmaster Hu's head immediately soared. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into a dense white large flaming hand that was about to land on Grandmaster Hu's head. Brat, don't go overboard. Grandmaster Hu's heart immediately quivered when he saw this large flaming hand. He had already experienced how frightening this thing was earlier. If he allowed it to land on his body, would he not follow in the footsteps of that person from earlier? Unfortunately, under the deterrence of Xiao Yan's absolute pressure, he was unable to escape even though he was an 8-star Do-D. All he could do was watch the large flaming hand suspended above his head descend with a bang. However, at the instant that the large flaming hand descended, Grandmaster Hu suddenly screamed out in shock and sternly said, "That's right. Hall Chief Su, save me." A sharp cry sounded. Immediately, an extremely powerful aura swept out from the ancient castle deep within the city like a gust of wind. An invisible energy agglomerated into an invisible sharp blade in the empty space and ruthlessly shot toward the large flaming hand. When it is possible to let people off, one should be lenient. By doing this, you seem to be looking down on our Northern Desolate Hall. A powerful voice was transmitted over. Soon after, a muffled bang was emitted from the air. The large flaming hand suspended above Grandmaster Hu's head also scattered. Xiao Yan was indifferent to this. He had already sensed this person's aura when he entered the city. However, he did not pay much attention to it. An initial 9-star Do-D. Xiao Yan had no need to fear this kind of cultivation a few months ago, much less now. When the flaming hand dissipated, the powerful aura that had been suppressing Master Hu also dissipated. Then, a middle-aged man appeared in front of Master Hu, using half of his body to shield Master Hu behind him. A joyous expression immediately surfaced on Grandmaster Hu's old face when he saw the appearance of the middle-aged man. At the same time, there was an additional cold smile in his eyes when he looked at Xiao Yan. That smile seemed to be saying that he was not afraid of Xiao Yan because he had a 9-star Do-D behind him. At the same time this middle-aged man appeared, the other people present immediately threw respectful gazes toward him. Just like Xiao Yan, the latter's deterrence was not inferior to an expert. Perhaps it was because the latter had guarded this place for many years, but these people were even more afraid of this Hall Chief Su when compared to him. With the strength of a 9-star Dodi, other than the 5 large clans, he could cover the sky with one hand in this city. Even the 5 large clans carefully worshipped him. The reason why Grandmaster who was able to call him out at such a critical moment was because he had worshipped him for so many years. When Hall Chief Su appeared, a pair of sharp eyes tore through the empty space like a sharp sword and landed on Xiao Yan's body. At the same time, the latter's eyes also calmly met his gaze. Soon after, Hall Chief Su looked at Xiao Yan's young face and seemed to have thought of something in his heart. He had seen this face not long ago. Although he only had a rough appearance, he was still able to confirm that the person in front of him was the person whom the Hall Chief had ordered him to deal with. Xiao Yan coldly smiled when he noticed Hall Chief Su's shocked gaze. He clearly understood in his heart that this fellow had recognized him. However, this was not important. Regardless of whether Hall Chief Su could recognize him or not, he would end them today. Originally, he did not want to create trouble with the Northern Desolate Hall. However, these people thought highly of their positions and no one could touch them. Killing a 1-star Dodi would cause a countless number of ants to rush over. At the end of the day, part of the reason for today's situation was that Pang Lu. However, all of this was no longer important. Xiao Xian was injured, the Northern King was sealed within the Obsidian Tower, and he had nearly been held back by the Southern Hall Chief. Once he was held back, he would definitely die. Since the other party would not give him any leeway, there was naturally no need for him to show any mercy. You are that fellow who killed Elderly? The middle-aged man's face carried some doubt. He still did not dare to believe that the person who could kill a 7-star Dodi would actually be such a young man. Although he had already seen a portrait of the latter, seeing it with his own eyes still caused his heart to be extremely shocked. Grandmaster whose expression immediately changed when these words were uttered. He had naturally heard about this matter. Only then did he understand in his heart why Xiao Yan would attack them without any hesitation. Brat, are you going to leave with me by yourself, or do you need me to take action and bring you back? The middle-aged man's tone was cold and indifferent. It seemed that he was not worried about the strength that Xiao Yan had displayed earlier. After all, he was a young man. Regardless of how strong his cultivation was, how strong could he be? Moreover, there were many experts from the Northern Desolate Hall present. If everyone joined hands, it would be extremely easy to take down Xiao Yan. Ha! Xiao Yan parted his mouth and smiled when he heard this. That smile was extremely cold. Why don't you come with me? What? The middle-aged man was slightly stunned. It seemed that he did not quite believe Xiao Yan's words. However, in the next moment, a black figure instantly appeared in front of the middle-aged man in a ghost-like manner. With a flip of his palm, it landed heavily on the middle-aged man's chest. What? This brat. What frightening speed! Although he was greatly shocked, the middle-aged man did not dare to hesitate. His many years of battle experience allowed him to possess absolute calmness at such a time. Faced with Xiao Yan's attack, the middle-aged man was shocked, but his actions did not show the slightest bit of panic. Do Qi surged and quickly gathered in his palm. Soon after, it violently collided with Xiao Yan's palm. Bang! Although the middle-aged man was not seriously injured, he was still sent flying by Xiao Yan's palm. The blood in his body churned. The fastest mobile version of the website. Chapter 982. Hall Master Su's expression changed drastically. While his body flew back, his eyes were angrily staring at Xiao Yan. His eyes were filled with shock. Hall Master Su's feet repeatedly stepped back in the empty space. Each time his feet landed, the empty space under his feet would collapse. Only after dozens of steps did Hall Master Su stabilize his body with a solemn expression. Both of his eyes stared intently at Xiao Yan. His tone was filled with disbelief as he spoke in a deep voice. Advanced 7-star Dodi? How is this possible? Your strength. One's cultivation cannot decide everything, just like how age does not decide one's strength. It's a pity that all of you are still unable to understand this principle. Before Hall Master Su's shocked voice sounded, Xiao Yan coldly smiled and shook his head. At the same time, his right hand was suddenly raised. His 5 fingers were bent into a claw and a thick white flame instantly surged from his fingertips. His ice-cold eyes, which were filled with a thick white flame, also landed on the stunned Grandmaster Hu by the side. Do you think that I cannot kill you just because you have the support of a 9-star Dodi? I hate people like you, who betray kindness the most. After the ice-cold cry sounded, Xiao Yan's hand landed on Grandmaster Hu's throat. The flame swiftly spread. In the blink of an eye, it covered Grandmaster Hu's entire body. Following a hoarse miserable cry, the old man's body was covered by ice in the blink of an eye. The instant Xiao Yan released his hand, it shattered and turned into ice shards that filled the ground. The strangeness of the bone-chilling flame was fully displayed at this moment. Xiao Yan turned his gaze and looked at the people from the other 4 clans. When the latter saw this overbearing attitude of Xiao Yan, they immediately shrank back. Even Hall Master Su, who was a 9-star Dodi, was no match for Xiao Yan. How would they dare to oppose him? At the same time, these people quietly rejoiced in their hearts. It was fortunate that they did not do anything to Xiao Yan earlier. Otherwise, it was likely that Grandmaster Hu would not be the only one who would be covered in ice shards. Brat! How dare you injure people in my Northern Wilderness Palace's territory? You really don't put my Northern Wilderness Palace in your eyes. Palace Master Su's face darkened when he saw that Grandmaster Hu had died just like that. No matter what, Grandmaster Hu was still a member of his Northern Desolate Palace. Over the years, Grandmaster Hu had given him many good things. He could be considered half of his people. Now that he saw his subordinate die, he could not help but feel a little angry. Palace Master Su's figure suddenly flickered. His terrifying speed made people shudder. In the blink of an eye, Palace Master Su had already appeared in front of Xiao Yan. With a flip of his palm, Palace Master Su's palm fiercely landed on Xiao Yan's chest. This was a killing move. Reliance Palm. Just as Xiao Yan was about to make his move, Palace Master Su's hand suddenly began to tremble rapidly. Soon after, numerous seemingly real palm imprints appeared in front of Xiao Yan's chest like ghosts. If all of these attacks were to land together, it was likely that even Xiao Yan would not be able to endure it. Sky-reaching hand. Xiao Yan was able to tell just how frightening this Yi Luo palm was at a glance. However, the combat experience that he had accumulated over the years caused Xiao Yan's heart to be completely fearless. A thought passed through his mind and the surging spiritual strength between his brows immediately surged out, transforming into an enormous palm with a clear outline. The large palm blocked the countless number of palm imprints in front of it. Bang! A loud muffled sound rang out. Xiao Yan and Palace Master Su's figures both retreated backwards. There was a distance of 100 steps between the two of them. Although Xiao Yan had suffered a small loss from the previous attack, he was not seriously injured. On the other hand, Palace Master Su's figure once again flickered after his attack failed. Like a maggot in a tarsal bone, he once again appeared beside Xiao Yan. He appeared behind Xiao Yan and a whip leg heavily smashed down from above, as if he wanted to split Xiao Yan into 2 from the top of his head. Golden Elephant Skill. Activate. Xiao Yan let out a low cry in his heart. The muscles all over his body immediately became taut. A frightening, enormous strength was like a huge dragon that had awakened as it was emitted from each of his muscles and cells. The invisible strength agglomerated into a thin layer of golden light on the surface of Xiao Yan's body. It was also this thin layer of golden light that had forcefully blocked the frightening attack from Hall Master Su behind him. Clang! As the attack landed, Palace Master Su's leg seemed to have kicked a city wall. Xiao Yan's body shook slightly and easily dispelled the huge force behind him. At the same time, the Force Elephant skill was unleashed at this moment. An even more frightening huge force condensed in Xiao Yan's palm. The moment he turned around, Xiao Yan grabbed Palace Master Su's ankle in his palm. The frightening huge force seemed to want to crush his bones. Just as Palace Master Su's face changed drastically, Xiao Yan swung his arm and ruthlessly threw the latter's body back like trash. Bang! Palace Master Su's body violently smashed into the city. A frightening force poured out, forcefully shaking a large area of the surrounding ground until it caved in. Just one attack had left behind an enormous deep pit in the city. At the bottom of the pit was Palace Master Su, who was usually revered by everyone. A dignified 9-star Dodi appeared to be unable to withstand a single blow in Xiao Yan's hands. Moreover, the most shocking thing was that the person who had blasted this 9-star Dodi apart was actually a young 7-star Dodi. This was something that Hall Chief Su had personally said. If the people present had not personally witnessed it today, It was likely that no one would believe that a 9-star Dodi would actually be so tyrannical by a 7-star Dodi. Gulp! As a cloud of dust spread over the place, the sound of people swallowing their saliva that was filled with shock also quietly sounded within the city. Xiao Yan's expression was indifferent as he looked at the bottom of the pit that was filled with dust from the empty air. Both of his eyes were slowly narrowed. An extremely frightening strength was wildly agglomerating at that spot. The Do Qi within Palace Master Su's body was swiftly flowing away. The enormous Do Qi had completely agglomerated at one point. It was not difficult to guess that the latter should be using an extremely powerful Do technique at this moment. "Can't endure any more, huh?" Xiao Yan softly muttered in his mouth. The corner of his mouth was lifted into a cold smile. Soon after, he raised both of his hands. His 10 fingers moved together and familiar complicated seals were formed. His lightning-like speed caused people to be dazzled. At the same time that these seals were formed, an enormous flame finger slowly agglomerated and formed in the air above Xiao Yan's head. Spirit Class Middle-Level Do Technique, Great Floating Seal. Spirit Class High-Level Do Technique, Desolation Finger. After the cry in their hearts sounded, an enormous square-shaped golden seal shot out explosively from the pit. Its aura was powerful, and it was just like a falling star that was flying diagonally as it charged toward the sky. Its target was Xiao Yan. On Xiao Yan's side, the enormous finger that was covered by the dense white flame above his head suddenly fell after the cry sounded in his heart. The empty air became distorted and collapsed wherever it passed. Its powerful aura appeared to be about to destroy the world. A buzzing, trembling sound resounded in the sky. Everyone's hearts trembled. Unless one was a 9-star Dodi, no one else would dare to easily touch such a frightening strength. Just sensing this aura was sufficient to cause the expressions of everyone present to change. The enormous golden seal and the enormous flame finger collided with a bang in front of everyone's anxious breathing. Chapter 983. A loud explosion resounded over the sky. Everyone in the city could sense that the entire city seemed to be trembling. The ground shook and a couple of people's bodies became unstable because of it. A frightening energy aura covered the entire place. A powerful pressure also descended on everyone's heads at this moment. Such a powerful strength was really difficult to imagine. At this moment, there was actually such a large gap between the cultivations of the two people who were clashing. The entire place became quiet the moment the large golden seal collided with a finger in the sky. Soon after, a frightening energy storm that seemed to be able to destroy the world swept wildly in all directions from the middle of the collision between the two. The dense white flame carried a turbulent Do Qi energy. The invisible space collapsed wherever it passed. The expressions of all the spectators in the arena changed drastically at this moment. Their bodies hurriedly pulled back. In the blink of an eye, nearly half of the buildings in the city were completely destroyed by this frightening energy storm. Other than some of the stronger elite Dodi, who were able to barely block the attacks, the rest of the bandy crowd were also seriously injured. The dense white flame emitted a dazzling white light that covered the entire city. At this moment, everyone's sight was covered. Numerous gazes still involuntarily looked at the middle of the white light. Other than a white light that one could not directly look at, there was an extremely frightening destructive aura at that spot. Everyone present felt shocked in their hearts. It was really difficult to imagine that a 7-star Dodi was able to be completely fearless in front of a 9-star Dodi and even suppress the latter. If it was any other time, it was likely that they would not choose to believe such a scene. However, when all of this had truly appeared in front of their eyes, they were unwilling to believe it and had no choice but to do so. Today, Xiao Yan had used his actions to tell them that any rule could be broken under the precondition of possessing absolute strength. One's cultivation might not be able to decide everything. The two powerful Do skills collided with each other and did not give way to each other. An earth-shaking buzzing sound repeatedly resounded over the sky. However, this stalemate merely lasted for a short 10+ seconds. Crack! Suddenly, a clear cracking sound resounded in the sky. Numerous gazes looked over, and all of their eyes were filled with doubt. They were also very curious as to where this cracking sound had come from. Was it the giant seal or the giant finger? At this moment on the ground below, at the bottom of the huge pit, Palace Master Su's face was filled with shock. Other people might not know, but his heart was very clear. The big Buddha picture seal was connected to him. Any change in the Do technique was within his perception. At this moment, the place where the shattering sound came from was his big Buddha picture seal. The Great Buddha Seal and the Desolate Finger seemed to be on par, but in the end, the Desolate Finger was still much stronger than the former. This was not only because the Do technique's level was higher, but also because of Xiao Yan himself. The latter's fighting strength was comparable to an intermediate 9-star Do D, while Palace Master Su was merely an initial 9-star Do D. In comparison, Palace Master Su was far from being a match for Xiao Yan in every aspect. His defeat was something that was expected. How is this possible? My big Buddha picture seal. How can it be defeated by a little brat's Do technique? How is this possible? Palace Master Su's expression had turned pale as the Do technique was about to shatter. However, before he could do anything, bang! In the next instant, one could hear a sudden shattering sound. The big Buddha picture seal that Palace Master Su had unleashed was completely shattered at this moment. The collision of the two Do techniques lasted for less than a minute from the beginning to the end. The suppression of absolute strength caused Xiao Yan's indifferent expression to not have the slightest change from the beginning until the end. An ordinary 9-star Do D no longer posed any threat to the current him. After which, the Desolate Finger carried the remaining great strength as it violently fell toward Palace Master Su without any reduction in its strength. A turbulent heat wave swept apart. The hot temperature grilled the invisible air. The fire wave swept over one wave after another. The dazzling white light that had originally filled the sky suddenly scattered. The expressions of the surrounding people also changed drastically as they frantically withdrew, afraid that they would be affected by this storm. At this moment, Palace Master Su's pale face did not have the slightest trace of redness. His pair of eyes appeared completely empty. Under this kind of incomparable fear, his spirit had already shrunk. Even if Xiao Yan were to pull back at this moment, it was likely that he would still die from fear. Bang! As expected, an earth-shaking explosion resounded over the sky. The entire city began to shake intensely at this moment. Everyone in the city flew into the sky with terrified faces, hiding far away from this world-shaking disaster. It was very difficult to imagine that such a frightening strength was actually something that a 7-star Do D could do. A long while later, the storm scattered. All that was left in the city below was an enormous pit that was like an abyss. All the surrounding buildings had been mercilessly swallowed. In the sky, those people who had not been affected by the remnant waves of this Do skill were currently watching this scene in front of them with pale faces. Their eyes were filled with an expression of deep disbelief. In the sky, Xiao Yan was expressionless. After being pestered time and time again, he no longer had any pity for these people. Withdrawing his gaze, Xiao Yan's toes gently pressed against the empty air. His body moved, intending to sweep past the city and continue moving forward. Just as Xiao Yan's body was about to sweep past the huge ancient castle, his body slowly came to a stop. He withdrew his gaze and it landed on the ancient castle. His eyes were ice cold. With a flip of his hand, the huge heavy Xian ruler landed in his hand. His other hand gently swept across the body of the heavy ruler. With a bang, a thick white flame rose and wrapped around the entire huge ruler. Flame-swallowing tsunami. With a low cry from his mouth, he waved the huge ruler in his hand. Following which, a thick white ruler light shot out with a chi sound. It tore through the empty space and expanded with the wind. Finally, with an aura that could destroy the world, it ruthlessly landed on the ancient castle below. Following which, under the shocked gazes of everyone in the city, the ancient castle where the Northern Wasteland Hall's southern hall was located collapsed and turned into ruins. This time, the Northern Wasteland Hall's southern hall was completely destroyed. The destruction of the southern hall was a shocking matter for the Northern Wasteland Hall. It was believed that not long later, Xiao Yan's name would spread to the Northern Wasteland Hall. At that time, the originally calm northern region would be stirred up by a storm. Chapter 984. In the vast and spacious sky. The blue sky spanned tens of thousands of kilometers. The searing hot sunlight descended from the sky, appearing as though it was about to forcefully melt a person. The desolate desert below reflected a reddish-yellow color, causing it to appear deathly still. A boiling hot wind blew through the air. It was just like a red-hot blade that swept through the sky. It easily shattered the corpses of some of the enormous magical beasts within the desert, turning them into yellow sand that was drowned by the strong wind. It was likely that this harsh environment could only be described with the word, bleak. The Red Lotus Desert was the largest desert within the northern wasteland. At the same time, it was also the most barren place in the entire northern wasteland. Although the ground in this place was not like yellow sand, it was also a barren land. The rock fragments all over the ground carried a searing high temperature, causing one to have difficulty walking. At the same time, it also scalded one's feet. It was precisely because of this that this Red Lotus Desert had another name, the Barefoot Desert. The extremely hot environment was not suitable for living creatures to exist. However, at this moment, a small group of people was slowly walking forward in this endless desert. Perspiration repeatedly fell from the foreheads of these people. However, before the beads of perspiration could land on the ground, they had already evaporated in this searing hot air. Most of these people were ordinary. However, there were a couple of middle-aged men who were wearing embroidered robes. Their auras were thick and they were not affected by this natural environment. These few people were all elite 9-star Do-D. As for the others, even an ordinary elite Do-D, their faces were similarly ugly in this kind of strange environment. The environment of this northern wasteland was not the least bit better than the western wasteland. Even an elite Do-D would be affected by the environment in this desert. After all, this was the strength of the world. Even someone as strong as an elite Do-D was unable to ignore it. However, there was one person among these people who was not affected by the harsh environment of this desert. A sloppy old man with ragged clothes and a miserable appearance was swaying as he walked among this small group of people. However, his expression did not change at all. His footsteps appeared to be messy, but if one were to carefully observe, one would discover that there seemed to be a special pattern within these messy footsteps. It was this pattern that allowed the old man's swaying body to not fall. Other than this sloppy old man, there was a young man wearing a black robe at the back of this group. His footsteps were steady. At this moment, he was slowly walking forward without changing his expression. From the looks of his manner, he was naturally Xiao Yan, who was heading north. A week had passed since the destruction of the Southern Hall. At this moment, the desert that Xiao Yan was in was a path that one must pass through in order to head to the northern mountain. Although this place was not a vast desert, it was still a vast area. In this place, even Xiao Yan would have the risk of getting lost if he did not have a guide. In order to avoid this, Xiao Yan could only follow this group in front of him. Although there were not many people in this group, the 3 high-class Do-D leading the way had a certain understanding of this desert. They were like old horses that knew the way. At this moment, they were the only guides in this desert. At this moment, everyone in this group had paid 50 low-grade spirit stones to these 3 people. The fee might be high, but it was not only used to pass through the Scarlet Training Desert. Most importantly, it was to allow them to safely pass through the desert. Although the Scarlet Training Desert was barren, there were also hidden dangers in this harsh environment. Powerful magical beasts struggled to survive in this environment. The struggle for survival was even more intense in this place. There would be powerful magical beasts dying at every moment. However, the ones that survived would be even more powerful existences. In this Scarlet Training Desert, even an ordinary high-class Do-D would be in danger. It was because of this that the leader of this small group was formed by 3 high-class Do-D. Walking at the back of the group, Xiao Yan was neither fast nor slow. Although there were broken rocks under his feet, it did not bring him any trouble. When his feet landed, the broken rocks under his feet were easily crushed like tofu. Wherever he passed, a row of clear footprints was left behind. At the same time, following Xiao Yan's inhalation and exhalation, the powerful fire-type energy that was contained in this world also continuously flowed into his body. Although this kind of training appeared to be slow, it was also extremely solid. Every trace of energy was condensed after being absorbed and refined countless times. The result was undoubtedly the most direct to the growth of one's cultivation. The only drawback was that the speed was slow. However, this did not affect Xiao Yan's interest in this. After the trip to the Obsidian Tower the last time, although Xiao Yan's cultivation had increased quite a bit, his aura was still not stable enough. After this period of slow accumulation, Xiao Yan believed that his cultivation would be able to completely solidify. This could be considered a good thing for him. The path of the strong was like the Scarlet Training Desert. Only by taking one step at a time and being down to earth would one be able to truly grow. Xiao Yan naturally understood this principle very well. Just as Xiao Yan was walking, the figure of the sloppy old man suddenly entered Xiao Yan's line of sight. An ordinary old man naturally would not attract Xiao Yan's attention. However, the difference between this old man and an ordinary old man was his tattered black robe. His robe was simply tattered beyond recognition. Moreover, It was very obvious that the robe had been burned to such a state by flames. However, it was also this that made Xiao Yan even more suspicious. This was because he could clearly sense a fierce and domineering flame aura coming from the old man's body. Just from this point alone, Xiao Yan could be sure that the old man was also a fire-type cultivator. Moreover, his cultivation was definitely not low. At the very least, when Xiao Yan used his spiritual strength to probe the old man, he was unable to find any valuable information. Despite being a fire affinity practitioner, he had ended up in such a miserable manner because of a flame. This really caused Xiao Yan's heart to be extremely curious. Just what kind of flame was able to cause a fire affinity expert to end up in such a manner? When Xiao Yan used his spiritual strength to probe the old man, the latter also sensed something. A smile flashed across the old man's tanned face. After which, his swaying footsteps became slower in an invisible manner. At this moment, Xiao Yan's heart was absent-minded as he pondered the question in his heart from a moment ago. A flame that could cause an elite Do Di to be reduced to such a miserable state. Unless it was done by someone with a higher cultivation than him, it was likely that there was only one kind of flame in this world that could do so. Could it be a heavenly flame? Xiao Yan suddenly thought of something in his heart. His eyebrows twitched. The instant he raised his head, a human figure suddenly appeared in front of him and actually pounced on him. Soon after, the figure fell in front of Xiao Yan in front of his surprised face. At the same time, a miserable cry also sounded, attracting the gazes of everyone in front of him. Xiao Yan's expression changed in shock. He did not expect that there would actually be someone who could get close to him without him noticing. Even though he had only been absent-minded for a second earlier, such an unexpected turn of events would be sufficient to cause him to be seriously injured if it was any other time. Xiao Yan's body hurriedly pulled back. Only after he confirmed that his surroundings were safe did he use a cautious gaze to look at the spot where he was standing earlier. At this moment, that sloppy old man was curled up on the ground at that spot. His face was filled with a painful expression as he cried out miserably. "Woo woo woo! Little brat, why did you bully this old man for no reason? My legs have been broken by you. I can't walk anymore." The moment these words were uttered, the people who were hurrying along behind frowned one after another. They looked at each other. Finally, their gazes landed on the three high-class Do Dis. Since the three of them had accepted the spirit stones from these people, they naturally had to ensure that they would escort them to their destination. They could not easily abandon anyone in the group. At this moment, the actions of this sloppy old man would undoubtedly slow down their forward speed. Moreover, there were quite a number of powerful magical beasts in this scarlet training desert. Once they were provoked by this old man, it would create even greater trouble. Compared to this, the latter situation was something that no one was willing to see. "Woo woo woo! It hurts!" The old man hugged his right leg with both hands and randomly rolled on the ground. The somewhat hoarse, sorrowful cry from his mouth caused one to feel uncontrollably irritable upon hearing it. There were even more disgusted gazes. In front of everyone, the three middle-aged men in embroidered robes also frowned as they looked at the sloppy old man curled up on the ground. At the same time, they also noticed Xiao Yan. They were naturally able to tell that this sloppy old man had the intention of creating trouble. However, regardless of the reason, they needed to first suppress this matter. Otherwise, if they were to allow him to continue creating trouble, it was likely that he would bring trouble to everyone. "This mister, the sky is high and the road is long. It is more important for us to hurry along our journey now. If there are no major problems, we hope that you can endure for a little longer. Wait until the sky turns dark before you check on your injuries. Moreover, the strength of the magical beasts in the Scarlet Training Desert is extremely frightening. Once they are lured over, it will be quite troublesome. I hope that you can consider everyone's safety." One of the three middle-aged men in embroidered robes stood up and opened his mouth with a calm tone. However, that sloppy old man acted as though he did not hear his words. He continued to curl up on the ground. His face revealed a painful expression, causing the people beside him to curse in their hearts. "Smelly old man, Master Chen is speaking nicely to you. Why are you still putting on such an act? If you still don't get up and shut up, be careful that I, your father, will ask you to get up." That middle-aged man spoke nicely in consideration of his own interests. However, those who were hurrying along did not care. They only cared about their own journey. They absolutely could not be delayed by anyone. At this moment, Xiao Yan was also frowning with suspicion as he looked at the sloppy old man curled up on the ground in front of him. He had never met the latter before. However, what was the intention of this old man's actions? That sloppy old man directly ignored the words of others. His pair of deep and bright eyes stared blankly at Xiao Yan. His mouth continued to howl in grief. "Brat, you broke my leg. You have to compensate me." A sharp and hoarse cry reverberated over this spacious area. The frowns on everyone's faces deepened. Xiao Yan's expression also sank. From the looks of it, this old man was purposely looking for trouble. Xiao Yan's face also sank. However, just as the old man was staring at Xiao Yan, the latter also clearly saw that there were actually a couple of burn scars on the old man's tanned face. However, at this moment, he did not have the mood to pay attention to them. "Smelly old man, are you done yet?" Seeing that this sloppy old man was actually indifferent, a middle-aged man with a somewhat red face from the crowd by the side softly cursed. His little patience had already been completely worn down by this old man. Now, he needed to use him to cool down. "Chi!" The middle-aged man's body suddenly shot forward the instant his words sounded. His body and mind were as fast as lightning. The dou qi in his body swiftly circulated. With a wave of his large hand, his body had already appeared behind the old man when it fell. He grabbed at the shoulder of the sloppy old man. Buzz! However, it was also at the next moment that the sloppy old man inadvertently turned his head around. His strange gaze instantly caused this middle-aged man's body to be unable to move even a little. The dou qi that was flowing within his body to his qi paths also appeared to have solidified in an instant. A deep fear suddenly rose from the bottom of his heart. His originally flushed face had also turned ghastly white at this moment. Bang! Following a soft muffled sound, the middle-aged man's body was involuntarily pulled back. Although he was not seriously injured, just this attack alone was sufficient to cause the expressions of everyone present to change. Although the cultivation of this middle-aged man could not be considered the top in this place, he was still a 6-star dou di. However, this sloppy old man was able to force the latter back with just a gaze without even touching his body. One could easily imagine just how strong the old man was. At this moment, it was not just Xiao Yan. Even the expressions of the three middle-aged men had also turned solemn in an instant. Numerous pairs of eyes were filled with a deep fear as they looked at the old man. However, just as Xiao Yan was about to open his mouth, Xiao Xian, who had been quiet for half a month, finally opened his mouth at this moment. "Brat, you must not be careless. This person's aura is extremely deep. Even I am unable to see through it. It is very likely that his cultivation has already surpassed the dou di class. You should be careful." An extremely solemn voice sounded from the bottom of Xiao Yan's heart. After these words sounded, it was as though an enormous rock had been thrown into a calm lake. Waves instantly rose within Xiao Yan's heart, surpassing the dou di class. Just these 4 words were sufficient to indicate just how great the true strength of this old man was. He was at least in existence at the Origin Transformation class. Origin Transformation class. Xiao Yan's heart trembled slightly. Even with Xiao Yan's character, he could not help but become anxious at this moment. Even the tightly clenched hands under his sleeves had unknowingly loosened. Chapter 985. The emotional change in Xiao Yan's heart seemed to have been completely seen by the sloppy old man. He muttered doubtfully in his heart. Soon after, the old man once again cried out in a loud voice. "I don't care. You must compensate me. If you don't, I will cry." Sob, sob, sob. After his words sounded, the old man really began to sob once again. However, his sobs appeared to be extremely awkward. Even though this was the case, no one around dared to say anything this time around. After all, they had seen the scene earlier. A 6-star dou di had been so casually forced back. If they dared to be insensible and charge forward, the result would be hard to say. At this moment, everyone could only hope that Xiao Yan would quickly take out something to settle the matter. Otherwise, it would be difficult to clean up the situation should those powerful magical beasts be attracted. Xiao Yan felt ashamed in his heart when he heard the old man's shameless words. It was really difficult to imagine that this person was actually an origin transformation expert. Such a character was completely different from what Xiao Yan had imagined. This junior unintentionally offended you in the matter earlier. If I have offended you, this junior will apologize to you. Even though he was unwilling in his heart, Xiao Yan had no choice but to temporarily hide when faced with an origin transformation expert. No matter how one put it, he was currently only a 7-star Do-D. An expert of this level was not someone that the current him could easily offend. It was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. Now, it was more important to hurry on with his journey. Humph, you still have some conscience. You still know to apologize after bullying this old man. Since it has already come to this, I will not make things difficult for you. I will reduce the compensation by half. 4 tier 4 medicinal pills and this matter will be settled. A satisfied smile immediately appeared on the sloppy old man's face when he saw Xiao Yan bow and greet him. He swiftly climbed up from the ground, appearing as though nothing had happened. However, the words that he said were shocking. 4 tier 4 medicinal pills? This old man is too black-hearted. The expressions of everyone around immediately changed after the words of the sloppy old man sounded. Even they felt that the request of this old man was unfair. The 3 9-star Do-D exchanged glances with each other. Although their eyes also contained a surprise that could not be suppressed, they ultimately became quiet. Let's go. The sloppy old man's voice sounded. Even though they could not suppress the shock in their eyes, they ultimately became quiet. Others might not know, but the 3 of them clearly understood that this unassuming sloppy old man was actually an origin transformation expert. It was not up to them to comment on the matters of an origin transformation expert. After all, there were bound to be some eccentric people at that level who could not tolerate the criticism of others. Trouble comes from the mouth. This was not a joke. As for Xiao Yan, after seeing the smile on the old man's face, the fear in his heart turned into doubt in the blink of an eye. Although this old man's actions were deliberately making things difficult, at the same time, it seemed to contain another kind of charm. Xiao Yan immediately recovered after this thought flashed through his heart. Immediately, he took out 4 tier 4 high-grade medicinal pills from his storage ring without any hesitation and handed them over. Although tier 4 medicinal pills were extremely precious, Xiao Yan did not show any hesitation on his face when he handed them over at this moment. If he could use 4 tier 4 medicinal pills to obtain the good impression of an origin transformation expert, it would undoubtedly be worth it for Xiao Yan. However, just as Xiao Yan was about to hand the medicinal pills in his hand to the sloppy old man, the latter suddenly opened his mouth. Wait! The old voice seemed to contain some kind of demonic nature. The instant the sloppy old man's words sounded, Xiao Yan's hand movement also paused. Hiss! Xiao Yan's heart was slightly startled. He could not help but feel shocked by the strength of this old man. Soon after, his eyes were surprised as he looked at the latter. He did not know what this old man was planning. Brat, the medicinal pills that I want are the tier 4 melting flame pill, chasing flame pill, embryonic phoenix pill, and serene wind flame transforming pill. Other than these 4 medicinal pills, I don't want anything else. Don't tell me that you can't take them out. Everyone around immediately knit their brows when the words of the old man sounded. Their hearts were filled with doubt. They had never heard of such a rare medicinal pill. Even the 3 9-star Do-D also knit their brows. Other than 1 or 2 of these 4 medicinal pills, they had also never heard of the remaining ones. Even less needed to be said about the medicinal effects of these medicinal pills. Hearing the sloppy old man's words, even Xiao Yan similarly knit his brows. As an alchemist, he was naturally very familiar with these 4 medicinal pills. These 4 medicinal pills were all tier 4 medicinal pills. Moreover, without exception, they were all used to fuse flames. In most cases, these medicinal pills would be used by alchemists to increase the degree of fusion between their bodies and flames, further increasing their ability to control flames. Hence, these medicinal pills were extremely rare in the outside world. It was reasonable that they were unknown to others. However, at this moment, the thing that caused Xiao Yan to be even more curious was why this old man would choose these 4 kinds of medicinal pills. With his cultivation, it should be impossible for him to use these medicinal pills. Unless, he wanted to use them to control some kind of extremely frightening flame. For example, heavenly flame. Thinking of this, Xiao Yan's heart suddenly trembled. Brat, do you have it or not? If you don't, this old man is going to flip out. At this moment, the sloppy old man appeared to have impatiently opened his mouth once again, interrupting Xiao Yan's thoughts. Soon after, the latter did not dare to delay as he swiftly rummaged through his storage ring. Very quickly, 2 crimson and 1 green-blue medicinal pills appeared in Xiao Yan's palm. These 3 medicinal pills were the flame-melting pill, flame-chasing pill, and serene wind flame-transforming pill that the sloppy old man had asked for. As for the phoenix embryo pill, due to its special ingredients, even Xiao Yan was unable to take it out from his collection. These 3 medicinal pills were something that Xiao Yan had obtained through a couple of lucky encounters. Originally, he wanted to use them to assist him in swallowing flames the next time. However, from the looks of it now, he did not have that opportunity. This elder, the 4 types of medicinal pills that you need are really rare. This junior is only able to take out 3 of them. Therefore, I hope that elder can understand. Xiao Yan cupped his hands together and handed the 3 medicinal pills in his hand to the sloppy old man. Although the latter frowned slightly, he still unceremoniously accepted the medicinal pills. Only then did the surrounding people quietly sigh in relief. If this incident could be resolved earlier, it would undoubtedly allow their hearts to relax. Heh, brat, I will accept the medicinal pills. However, you must remember that you still owe me 1. After keeping the medicinal pills, the sloppy old man quickly let out a strange laugh. His gaze slyly looked at Xiao Yan. His toes gently pressed on the ground and his body rose into the air. His eyes swept over the surrounding people with a cold smile. Immediately, with a swoosh sound, he transformed into a flaming light and disappeared from this place in the blink of an eye. Brat, we will meet again. Chapter 986. The old voice continued to reverberate within this searing hot desert. However, the sloppy old man's figure had already disappeared. Only a moment later did everyone gradually recover from the enormous pressure from earlier. Everyone's tensed nerves suddenly relaxed at this moment. Cold sweat fell like rain. Everyone's originally tired bodies had become a little weaker at this moment. The hot sun's light mercilessly scattered down and landed on everyone's bright red skin. The perspiration quickly evaporated and disappeared. At this moment, other than the 3 9-star Do Di and Xiao Yan, the remaining people were seated cross-legged on the ground. They began to recover the strength that had flowed out from their bodies. The 3 middle-aged men exchanged glances with each other when they saw everyone seated cross-legged on the ground. They nodded and spread out. They carefully observed their surroundings. Xiao Yan watched the sloppy old man leave. At this moment, he had also withdrawn his gaze. His gaze randomly swept over everyone present. He was just about to sit down when Xiao Yan's expression suddenly changed in the next moment. Even the eyes of the 3 middle-aged men instantly gathered together. The gazes of the 4 of them turned at the same time and landed in the middle of the group. Under the ground that was filled with rubble, they could clearly sense an extremely powerful aura surging from the ground at an extremely fast speed. It was like lava that was about to break out of the ground, causing the hearts of the 4 of them to tremble. Hurry up and leave this place. The 3 middle-aged men cried out in unison in a deafening manner. Everyone who had just sat down were immediately woken up. Their bodies hurriedly pulled back at the same time as they recovered. Each of them flashed and left the place where they were seated. Bang! At the same time, the ground where everyone was seated was suddenly torn apart by an enormous force. Dust flew and an enormous beast broke out from the ground in front of everyone's eyes. A sharp roar transformed into an invisible sound wave. Accompanying it was an extremely frightening and powerful destructive aura. Advanced 9-star Do Di. Damn beast. I was nearly injured by you. You clearly know that we have 3 9-star Do Di here, yet you still dare to charge out. You are really seeking death. Coming back to their senses, the 3 middle-aged men's faces suddenly became gloomy. With a wave of their sleeves, a hurricane suddenly swept out, sweeping away the dust between heaven and earth. The appearance of the giant beast in front of them also became clear in an instant. Hiss! His scarlet tongue flicked in the air, and an extremely strong stench spread out. His 2 triangular eyes swept across the 3 middle-aged men, and a strong bloodthirsty light flashed in the depths of his purple eyes. His huge body was like a pillar in front of everyone's eyes. A huge shadow shrouded everyone present. At the same time, a huge haze shrouded everyone's hearts. Red-scaled python. How could it be this thing? Damn it, doesn't that mean? Seeing the huge python before them, the 3 middle-aged men's expressions immediately changed. If it was any other magical beast, it would be fine, but if it was this beast... Bang bang bang! At the same time that the 3 men's expressions changed, another 3 sounds of earth breaking appeared one after another. The expressions of everyone present became unusually ugly. As the matter was swept over, one could see another 3 enormous pythons that were the same size as the first one standing around everyone, surrounding them. In this way, the 4 red-scaled pythons that had appeared were equivalent to 4 9-star DoD. 4. Damn it, it is actually 4 red-scaled pythons. The red-scaled pythons often lived in groups when they were young. Only when they reached maturity would they leave the group. Even though this was the case, the red-scaled pythons would still form a small group. A 4-headed red-scaled python that lived in a group could already be considered a peak existence in this red training desert. Damn it, this is going to be troublesome. It is all that damn old man's fault. If it were not for him, we would not have provoked these beasts. Seeing these 4 enormous pythons, the expressions of the 3 middle-aged men immediately became ugly. 3 against 4, they did not have any chance of victory. As for these ordinary elite DoD around them, they did not have any hope. In the face of absolute strength, numbers were not able to decide anything. Even though everyone present was a strong DoD, these people were still not enough in front of a 9-star DoD. At the same time that these 3 middle-aged men thought of this point, the surrounding elite DoD also had similar thoughts in their hearts. These people all had an understanding of how frightening the red-scaled pythons were. From the looks of the situation in front of them, they already had no other choice but to flee. Hiss. However, just as the crowd was preparing to flee in all directions, the 4 enormous pythons struck first. Their enormous bodies twisted and the snake bodies that were buried under the ground drilled out like mountain ranges. Very quickly, they blocked the path of everyone present. At this moment, everyone present, including the 3 middle-aged men and Xiao Yan, had been completely surrounded by these 4 enormous pythons. They had become turtles in a jar with nowhere to retreat. Damn it, there is no way out. We can only force our way through. The expressions of all the elite DoD changed drastically. A few of them also clenched their teeth hatefully. They turned their gazes to the narrow gap between the bodies of the 4 red-scaled pythons. From there, they could still see a large area of the outside world. Clearly, that was the best place to break through. Charge! We must not sit and wait for death. We must charge out alive. Charge! After a few roars sounded, 2 to 3 elite DoD rushed forward without caring about the others. They wanted to take the opportunity to escape from the encirclement of the 4 enormous pythons. These few idiots, they are really seeking death. Seeing this scene, the 3 9-star DoD threw pitiful gazes at them. It was not that they did not want to save them. It was just that these fellows were seeking their own deaths. They could not be blamed for standing aside and watching. Soon after, the few human figures that had charged out had already appeared in front of the 4 enormous pythons in a flash. It looked like they would be able to escape the encirclement in the next moment. However, it was also at this moment that... Hiss! A hoarse hiss was emitted from the enormous pythons' mouths. Almost at the same time, a couple of bloody mouths flashed past like meteors flying across the sky. Following a couple of miserable cries, the few elite DoD with extraordinary strength were cut into pieces by the 4 red-scaled pythons in the blink of an eye. After which, the 4 enormous pythons quickly turned their bloodthirsty eyes toward the remaining people in the battleground in front of the terrified gazes. These 4 beasts are not easy to deal with. The 3 of us will each hold back one of them. As for the remaining one, it will depend on your luck. The expressions of the 3 9-star DoD were extremely solemn. They let out a warning from their mouths. Immediately, their bodies shot forward and each of them faced a red-scaled python. As for the remaining people, all of them wore terrified faces. They did not even have the time to save their own lives. How would they have the courage to face these red-scaled pythons? As for Xiao Yan, the corner of his mouth was involuntarily lifted into an arc as he eyed the remaining 9-star DoD red-scaled python in front of him. Not only did this red-scaled python have a powerful cultivation, but its physical body was also incomparably strong. The wild and violent strength contained within its blood was an excellent material for tempering one's physical body. If he could kill it and obtain its blood, Xiao Yan's physical strength would undoubtedly increase. Chapter 987. As this thought flashed across his mind, Xiao Yan flipped his hand and grasped the heavy Shen Buster Sword. The tip of his foot lightly tapped the air and his figure immediately transformed into a black shadow. In the blink of an eye, he had already appeared in front of the red-scaled python. The giant Buster Sword in his hand danced and smashed down on the red-scaled python's head. Hiss! Xiao Yan's sudden appearance also caused the red-scaled python to be startled. After all, it was a high-ranked magical beast. Even though it lived in the Scarlet Training Desert all year round, its intelligence was not inferior to a human's. Thus, in response to Xiao Yan's frightening speed, the red-scaled python similarly felt an indescribable threat. With a hiss, the red-scaled python twisted its enormous body and its large head nimbly dodged to the side. At the same time, its enormous snake tail swept towards Xiao Yan's back and aimed directly at the latter's head. Humph! With regards to the force that was attacking from behind, Xiao Yan was naturally very clear. The movements of his hands did not change in the slightest. His body twisted and the giant buster sword also swept viciously in front of him in a strange manner. At the same time, it fiercely collided with the red-scaled python's enormous snake tail. Clang! Sparks flew and the sound of metal colliding immediately rang out. The giant buster sword buzzed for a while and Xiao Yan's hand, which was holding onto the heavy Xian buster sword, could not help but tremble. The enormous snake tail in front of him was similarly shaken back as its scales scattered in all directions. Heh! What a tyrannical defensive power this body has. After the collision, Xiao Yan could not help but feel a sense of fear towards the beast's physical defense. With such tyrannical physical strength, it was no wonder that the red-scaled python could be ranked as one of the top existences in the Scarlet Training Desert. To be able to survive in this kind of environment, it was indeed not an ordinary person. However, this was also good. For Xiao Yan, the more this was the case, the more it proved the value of the red-scaled python. He did not wish to expend all his effort only to end up with insignificant results. Hiss! Just as Xiao Yan's figure paused, the enormous snake head suddenly appeared behind him. Its bloody mouth was wide open and the fangs in its mouth were like the scythe of a death god. They were suffused with an icy white luster and were stained with scarlet blood as they bit towards Xiao Yan. If he was bitten by it, even if he did not die, it was likely that he would be left with an irreversible injury. Indeed, it is still a beast, unable to change its nature of sneak attacks. Xiao Yan's eyes were sharp. He did not display the slightest panic because of the sudden appearance of the red-scaled python. Xiao Yan rotated his hand and the heavy Xian ruler was held in a reverse grip. His footsteps changed and the sky extinction step was instantly unleashed. His body instantly transformed into a phantom. When the red-scaled python's mouth was about to land, Xiao Yan's body appeared to have narrowly dodged by the side of its mouth. Even the scarlet-red snake's tongue was about to stick to Xiao Yan's back. An icy cold, bloodthirsty killing intent surged from behind. Xiao Yan's thoughts were clear and his movements were fluid without any delay. Standing in the air, his body leaned forward to dodge the red-scaled python's attack. At the same time, his body, which was originally facing the red-scaled python, suddenly twisted in a strange manner. Within his pair of pitch-black eyes, a thick white flame instantly surged. Almost at the same time, with a pu sound, the thick white flame instantly covered the entire giant ruler like a sail in the wind. In the instant that Xiao Yan's body turned around, the hand that was holding the heavy Xian ruler tightened even more. His right arm abruptly waved and his muscles tightened. A powerful force, along with Dou Qi, gushed out at the same time. Like a volcano erupting, a heavy blow accurately smashed into the head of the red-scaled python. 7-layered sky-breaking ruler. 1 ruler. Yelling angrily in his heart, the thick white flame suddenly surged violently. The instant the giant ruler came into contact with the red-scaled python's head, the flame transformed into a resplendent ruler's tip. It was like a sharp blade, intending to forcefully slice this beast apart. Chi! The ruler's tip streaked across the sky, shining like the stars in the night sky. The dazzling radiance disappeared in an instant. The shocking ruler's tip swept across a small portion of the red-scaled python's body. The hard snake scales collapsed like a city wall, disintegrating. Under the ice-cold snake scales, the flesh and blood split open, and dark red blood gushed out. Under the scorching heat of the sun, the blood appeared especially dazzling. Roar! A hoarse roar of pain came from the red-scaled python's mouth. At the same time, the latter's body trembled. Its pair of purple triangular eyes suddenly emitted a scarlet glow. After suffering from one strike, this beast was thoroughly enraged by Xiao Yan. The situation here attracted the attention of the 3 middle-aged men. At the same time, the other 3 red-scaled pythons also paid attention. Hiss! This brat. Looks like he's not an ordinary Dou Di. He's actually able to anger this beast. The three of them saw the huge wound on the red-scaled python's head. The dark red blood caused their expressions to change. He had only attacked a few times, yet he was able to cause the red-scaled python such pain. This was enough to show how powerful the young man who injured the latter was. Who is this brat? I've never heard of such a person in the northern region before. The expressions of the three men changed one after another. After roaming the northern region for so many years, they had never heard of such a young 9-star Dodi. The appearance of Xiao Yan involuntarily caused them to feel extremely suspicious. Chi! In the next moment, the red-scaled python opened its mouth and a scarlet-yellow Do Chi immediately spurted out. It turned into a Do Chi light pillar that carried an aura that could destroy the heavens and the earth, as if it wanted to pierce through Xiao Yan in one strike. Hey, are you going to use your true strength? That's fine too. I wasn't satisfied enough the last time. Today, I'll use you as a test stone. Seeing the red-scaled python reveal such an appearance, Xiao Yan's expression did not reveal any seriousness. Instead, he had an eager appearance. The deputy hall chief of the Southern Hall was only an intermediate 9-star Dodi the last time. It was insufficient for him to display his true strength. This time, however, the appearance of this red-scaled python allowed Xiao Yan to give it a try. A powerful force mercilessly streaked across the sky. The invisible space was like a fragile mirror that instantly shattered. In the blink of an eye, the Do Chi light pillar had already appeared in front of Xiao Yan. 7-layered sky-breaking ruler, 2 feet. Xiao Yan held the huge ruler in his hand and viciously hacked down from above. The ruler glow once again shot out and destroyed the red-scaled python's attack. Buzz! Almost at the same time the Do Chi light pillar was destroyed, the red-scaled python's huge snake tail once again arrived behind Xiao Yan. Unlike the last time, the red-scaled python did not choose to fight head-on. Instead, it used its snake tail to wrap around Xiao Yan's body at an extremely fast speed and tightly curled up. A frightening force erupted at this moment. It was as if it was crushing an ant, intending to crush Xiao Yan's body. Unfortunately, this beast had clearly underestimated Xiao Yan's methods. Although his arms were bound and he had no way to use the heavy Xian ruler, other than Do Chi, his physical strength was also his strong suit. Force Elephant Technique. Golden Elephant Technique. Activate. The two techniques were used at the same time. The golden light shone brightly. Under Xiao Yan's seemingly thin body, a powerful force as heavy as Mount Tai suddenly awakened at this moment. Boom! Xiao Yan's body shook violently. A huge virtual image that was almost solid suddenly rose from the ground behind him. Following the movements of Xiao Yan's hands moved together and forcefully broke free from the red-scaled python's huge body. After which, under the stunned gazes of everyone present, it hugged the red-scaled python's tail and forcefully swung it. It actually lifted the entire body of the red-scaled python into the air. Chapter 988. The two arms of the virtual image stretched out and hugged the red-scaled python's huge tail. Its frightening strength was even greater than the red-scaled python's, and it actually lifted the red-scaled python's body up. Within the encirclement formed by the other 3 red-scaled pythons, Xiao Yan lifted up the huge beast in his embrace. Everyone's gazes were immediately attracted and turned to look at Xiao Yan. Hua! The crowd was agitated in an instant. Their faces, which were originally carefully moving about, revealed a shocked expression at this moment. Even the 3 middle-aged men were panting at this moment as they threw their gazes of disbelief toward Xiao Yan. This guy. Who exactly is he? What a frightening strength. The faces of the 3 middle-aged men were filled with shock, joy, and joy. They were shocked at Xiao Yan's terrifying strength and at the same time, were happy that the latter had reduced one of their opponents. What was even more fortunate was that the 3 of them did not make things difficult for Xiao Yan earlier. Otherwise, it would be difficult to say what kind of situation they would be in now. Losing such a powerful teammate was definitely a fatal blow to them. Fortunately, they did not do such a stupid thing. Chi! In Xiao Yan's embrace, the red-scaled python was like a withered tree swaying in the wind. Following Xiao Yan's deliberate twisting of his body, it swayed counterclockwise. Its huge body was not under its own control and swayed in this narrow encirclement. The situation that should have been under the control of the red-scaled python had now fallen into Xiao Yan's hands. Chi-chi-chi. The chi-chi sound of rushing wind gradually resounded over the place. The swaying of the red-scaled pythons had already affected the three battlegrounds. The three middle-aged men and the three red-scaled pythons also ceased their intense collisions because of this. The three nine-star Do-D threw surprised gazes at this windmill-like enormous snake. This was especially the case when their gazes landed on Xiao Yan, who was in the middle, who had caused this scene to occur. The shock in their hearts became even denser. Hiss. The appearance of this scene also caused the other three scarlet-scaled pythons to roar endlessly. One after another, they twisted their bodies, and their huge snake tails hooked onto the swaying body of the scarlet-scaled python from three different directions, wanting to use this as a pretext to stop its body. Buzz. The invisible empty space fluctuated intensely and the huge beast's body in Xiao Yan's embrace came to a stop. At the same time, the red-scaled python in Xiao Yan's embrace recovered and abruptly twisted its body. The head that had been thrown away abruptly turned around. The moment it opened its bloody mouth, a huge Do-Chi light pillar immediately shot out and shot toward Xiao Yan. Hey! With a cold laugh, Xiao Yan watched as the Do-Chi light beam shot towards him. However, the illusory figure that was hugging the crimson-scaled python's tail fiercely swung it. The frightening force caused the crimson-scaled python's tail to uncontrollably block in front of Xiao Yan. Boom! A muffled collision sound was emitted. Immediately, the python's skin and flesh were split open. Fresh blood splattered in all directions. A painful roar transformed into an invisible sound wave that swept across the area. Haha, a beast is indeed a beast. When it becomes ruthless, it even hits itself. The corner of Xiao Yan's mouth parted into a cold smile. His body flashed and he arrived in the air above the snake tail that was writhing intensely. A cold glint was revealed in Xiao Yan's eyes when he saw the dense white bones and the huge snake tail that was dripping with fresh blood. Seeing that your blood is flowing, let me help you stop it. As the cold cry from his mouth sounded, a dense white flame suddenly ignited on the surface of Xiao Yan's body, turning his entire body into a flaming person. Ha! The instant the flame covered his body, Xiao Yan's body immediately shot downwards. His entire body was like a shooting star as he pierced through the crimson-scaled python's tail in one strike amidst the crimson-scaled python's painful roar. Roar! The roar went from shop to horse until it was completely silent. However, that kind of pain was still hair-raising even if one didn't personally experience it. Scorch marks covered half of the crimson-scaled python's body. The blood had indeed been stopped, but the crimson-scaled python's control over its own snake tail had also been stopped. Chi! After the pain, it became even more violent and crazy. The crimson-scaled python's huge body violently twisted as it charged towards Xiao Yan without caring about anything else. Its extremely fast speed coupled with its huge body was simply inconceivable. At the same time, the other three huge pythons also focused their attention on Xiao Yan at this moment. However, just as they were about to attack the latter, the three middle-aged men each dodged and blocked them. Haha, little brother, I didn't expect you to be a hidden expert like us. Just leave these three beasts to us. As for this one, I'll leave it to you. The three middle-aged men parted their mouths and smiled. The situation in front of them was undoubtedly what they wanted to see the most. Of course, this was also something that they had least expected. Who would have thought that a black-robed young man who looked so young would actually possess such a frightening strength? This kind of strength caused even them, who were 9-star Do-D, to feel solemn. Fortunately, they were on the same side as the former. Hearing the loud laughter of the three middle-aged men, Xiao Yan also nodded his head heavily. It was undoubtedly the best that these three could help him delay the other three crimson-scaled pythons. His feet moved as he randomly used the sky extinction step, and easily dodged the crimson-scaled python's attack. Xiao Yan was just about to move when he immediately frowned. His gaze swept towards the land to the south. Relying on the strength of his spiritual strength, he could vaguely sense a few other obscure auras approaching. Oh! Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes. He waved his arm and blocked the crimson-scaled python's attack. After which, he slowly turned around and his gaze returned to the crimson-scaled python's body. Looks like the current situation does not allow me to drag this out any longer. Since this is the case, I can only end this quickly. Xiao Yan laughed faintly. The crimson-scaled python appeared to have understood him. It roared and charged toward Xiao Yan without caring about anything else. Chi! Faced with the crimson-scaled python that was charging toward him, Xiao Yan similarly did not dodge. His body shook slightly and the illusionary image behind him suddenly trembled. Following Xiao Yan's body, it flashed and appeared in front of the crimson-scaled python in an instant. When the bodies of the two were compared, it was like comparing a mountain to a flat hill. With such a difference in size and this seemingly crazy action, it was likely that an ordinary person would only think of two words: a mayfly trying to shake a tree. However, this was not the case. Xiao Yan bent his right arm and clenched his fist. The illusionary image behind him moved exactly the same as Xiao Yan. Facing the gigantic crimson-scaled python, Xiao Yan did not use any fancy movements. Instead, he used the most direct method, which was to meet force with force. Bang! As the fist smashed down, the empty space in front of Xiao Yan collapsed with a buzzing sound. A frightening strength agglomerated into an invisible wind wall in front of him. The heavy fist violently smashed onto the body of the red-scaled python. The hard snake scales only lasted for less than a breath's time before they were suddenly shattered. The flesh and blood below could not even withstand a single blow. A terrifying force poured out and the crimson-scaled python's body rapidly caved in like a deflated balloon. The sound of bones breaking was like the sound of piano keys. Such a miserable state was simply unbearable to watch. The gigantic beast was forcefully blocked by Xiao Yan's punch. The latter's body was towering and unmoving while the crimson-scaled python was nailed into the empty space. Regardless of how enormous the force that surged out of its body was, it was ultimately useless. Under full force, even the crimson-scaled python was no match for Xiao Yan. Roar! The crimson-scaled python's painful cries were mixed with madness. It struggled to turn its gigantic head and opened its mouth wide. Countless fangs closed downwards like a ghost demanding for its life. Immediately after, under the stunned gazes of the surrounding crowd, it actually swallowed Xiao Yan in one gulp. The appearance of this scene caused even the 3 9-star Dodi to be involuntarily stunned. This brat won't be. The expressions of the three changed. They were clearly aware of how frightening the crimson-scaled python was. Once one was swallowed by it, there was no need to think too much about the result. Now that Xiao Yan had been swallowed by this crimson-scaled python, there was no need to say more about his fate. Ugh, even if he was completely confident, he shouldn't have dragged it out like this. This brat has ultimately harmed himself. The three of them sighed. They could not help but frown. Even with such great talent, he had still ended up ruining himself, however. It was also at this moment that everyone present suddenly realized that after the crimson-scaled python had swallowed Xiao Yan, there was no longer any movement. Only after 10 breaths did they gradually see that the surface of the crimson-scaled python's body had unknowingly been covered by a thin layer of cold ice. What is that? Everyone was shocked. While they were feeling suspicious in their hearts, a slight caw-caw sound was emitted from the crimson-scaled python's body. The expressions of the surrounding elite Dodi immediately changed. Each of them carefully stepped back. On the other side, the battle between the 3 9-star Dodi and the 3 crimson-scaled pythons was becoming increasingly intense. Bang! The sudden explosion sounded in this area. The expressions of everyone present immediately changed. They could clearly see that the red-scaled python, which had swallowed Xiao Yan into its mouth a moment ago, had actually burst apart an inch at a time in front of their eyes. This strange scene caused everyone who saw it to feel a shock in their hearts. They felt an inexplicable fear. Soon after, an even more shocking scene appeared once again. Following the explosion of the crimson-scaled python's body, a young man wearing a black robe once again appeared in front of everyone's eyes without any injuries. Who else could this person be other than Xiao Yan? Chapter 989. The hot sun hung high in the boundless desert like a cluster of fireballs. It emitted a high temperature that roasted the land below. At this moment, a group of people and 3 huge pythons were standing high in the sky above a desert that was in a mess. The hot air was filled with a tense atmosphere. The aftershocks from the intense battle from a moment ago had yet to subside. However, at this moment, all of their gazes were focused on a black-robed young man in the battleground without exception. The latter's body was standing straight in the empty air. One of his hands was behind his back while the other hand was extended forward. A dense white flame slowly rose from his palm. The frightening high temperature that it emitted caused people to feel terrified. Compared to the hot sun that hung high above their heads, this cluster of dense white flame was even more terrifying. Everyone present felt shocked from the bottom of their hearts as they looked at the uninjured black-robed young man in the battleground. Even the 3 9-star Do-D felt incomparably shocked in their hearts at this moment. Of course, the ones who felt even more terrified were undoubtedly the 3 remaining red-scaled pythons. Even though they were naturally bloodthirsty, fear involuntarily rose in their hearts when they saw their companion die in such a strange manner in front of them. In the sky, Xiao Yan slowly withdrew his hand that was covered by a rising flame. At the same time, the cluster of fist-sized essence blood that was wrapped in the middle of the flame was also kept by Xiao Yan into his storage ring. This cluster of essence blood belonged to this red-scaled python. It contained an extremely powerful wild and violent energy. That kind of energy was what Xiao Yan needed to refine his physical body. However, this amount seemed to be a little unsatisfactory. After keeping the essence blood, Xiao Yan's eyes turned. His ice-cold gaze shot toward the remaining 3 red-scaled pythons. His dense, cold eyes caused the bodies of these 3 enormous creatures to involuntarily tremble. In the face of absolute strength, their outer appearance did not represent anything. When Xiao Yan's gaze landed on the 3 red-scaled pythons, the 3 9-star Do-D's bodies flashed and arrived beside Xiao Yan. After which, their gazes that were filled with murderous intent landed on the bodies of the 3 huge pythons. The original 3 against 4 situation did not change. However, the relationship between the hunter and the prey had undergone a great change. Roar! The 3 red-scaled pythons involuntarily retreated amidst a low roar. If they continued to stay in this kind of situation, it was likely that they would have to pay an even more painful price. Unknowingly, escape had become the only choice of these 3 enormous creatures. Xiao Yan watched these 3 fellows leave from the empty space. He did not have the slightest intention of stopping them. The 3 middle-aged men beside him also sighed in relief. Once they were certain that these 3 Chis had completely disappeared from the range of their senses, the 3 of them finally let out a long sigh of relief. They recovered, cupped their hands to Xiao Yan, cupped them together, and laughed. Hee, it's all thanks to you, sir. Otherwise, I'm afraid we wouldn't know how to deal with this. Xiao Yan turned his gaze around and saw the relaxed expressions on the faces of the 3 middle-aged men. He shook his head and said with a frown, "The 3 of you, now is not the time to relax. I can sense that there are a few other auras hurrying toward us. If we continue to stay here, I'm afraid that we will face even greater trouble. Therefore, I hope that the 3 of you can lead the way and leave this place first." Hearing Xiao Yan's words, the expressions of the 3 middle-aged men were involuntarily startled. They did not sense any auras approaching. Although this was the case, after witnessing Xiao Yan's strength, the 3 of them did not doubt the former's words. The 3 of them nodded and immediately gathered the remaining elite Do-D. After pointing out the direction, the group immediately headed north. After experiencing the tense atmosphere from before, all of these people were extremely tense. They did not dare to relax even a little along the way. Their speed was much faster than usual. However, the group of people followed closely behind Xiao Yan. As for the 3 9-star Do-D, they split up and led the way. The 3 middle-aged men could only feel a little embarrassed in their hearts when faced with this situation in the group. However, they did not dare to slow down their speed even a little. Not long after this group of people left the place where the big battle had occurred, a few huge beasts furiously rushed over. Their imposing manner was not the least bit weaker than the few red-scaled pythons from before. It was hard to imagine that if this group of people continued to stay here, it was likely that they would not have any chance of surviving today. Sensing the thread of frightening powerful aura that was transmitted from the distance, the expressions of the 3 middle-aged men changed. Their bodies that were flying forward became even faster. At the same time, a respectful expression appeared in their eyes when they looked at Xiao Yan. It was a long while later that this group of people finally left the area where the big battle had occurred. At the same time, the originally hot sun that was hanging in the sky had unknowingly descended on the western horizon. It was close to dusk. The day's time was about to end. What awaited this group of people was another long and short night. At the same time, there was also an unknown tomorrow. As dusk descended, this group of people temporarily stopped in front of a strange rock under the guidance of the 3 9-star Do-D. Within this red training desert, the flowing wind that blew in the air was still unbearable even when it was night time. Therefore, this strange rock became the best place for them to temporarily hide from the strong wind. Not long after everyone set up camp under these huge rocks, the sky had already turned completely dark. After the 3 middle-aged men once again expressed their thanks to Xiao Yan, Each of them spread out to the periphery of the crowd and cautiously observed their surroundings. Compared to the day, the red training desert at night was undoubtedly much more dangerous. This was also one of the reasons why they had stopped. As for Xiao Yan, he was currently sitting cross-legged on top of an enormous rock. With a flip of his hand, the cluster of red-scaled python's essence blood that he had obtained during the day once again appeared in his palm. A thin layer of thick white flame wrapped around this cluster of viscous blood. Even with the isolation of the flame, the wild and violent energy within it still seeped out. The violent aura caused one's blood to boil, causing one to involuntarily want to let out a long howl. Seeing this cluster of essence blood in front of him, Xiao Yan pursed his lips and smiled. This kind of wild and violent energy was exactly what he needed. Unfortunately, the essence blood within this red-scaled python's body seemed to be a little lacking. If it was not to avoid those fellows behind him today, Xiao Yan would really not be willing to let those 3 fellows leave so easily. As he thought of this, Xiao Yan could not help but feel a little regretful as he shook his head. Without any hesitation, he opened his mouth and a suction force surged out. He actually swallowed this fist-sized cluster of blood into his stomach. Chapter 990. The instant this ball of essence blood entered Xiao Yan's body, it immediately emitted an extremely vigorous and violent energy, forming a circle of blood-colored waves that wreaked havoc within Xiao Yan's body. It was as if it wanted to destroy his meridians and internal organs. Regarding this situation, it was naturally within Xiao Yan's control. Since he was able to let it in, he naturally would not be unprepared. Pooh! With a thought, a dense white flame immediately emerged from all parts of his body, enveloping all of his meridians and bones. No matter how the energy within the ball of essence blood collided, it was completely ineffective. Looking inside his body, the heavenly flame condensed and transformed into a finger. Without any hesitation, it touched the ball of bright red blood. Bang! Accompanied by a slight muffled sound, the ball of essence blood the size of a fist suddenly burst open, transforming into countless tiny blood droplets. Like dense raindrops, they scattered to all parts of Xiao Yan's body in the blink of an eye, rapidly merging into his bones and flesh. If he wanted to use this ball of essence blood to temper his body, then the best way was naturally to completely release the energy within this ball of essence blood, allowing the energy contained within to completely explode into every cell in Xiao Yan's body, allowing them to explode and destroy him. With regards to this process, Xiao Yan only needed to be patient. Bang bang bang! The tiny droplets of blood entered his muscles, after which they exploded like balloons. The wild and violent destructive power within them was completely displayed at this moment. The powerful energy transformed into a wave of energy that continuously bombarded every cell. Instantly, the pain of his muscles being torn apart immediately transmitted from every part of Xiao Yan's body. The intensity of the intense pain was as if heavy rain was pouring down on his body. The intense pain that stimulated his nerves was even more like being pierced by countless steel needles. Although the energy contained within the red-scaled python's essence blood was violent, after being broken down countless times, the energy within had already been diluted by a lot. At the very least, it would not bring any negative effects to Xiao Yan's body. Even so, this extreme tempering method still caused one's entire body to feel cold. The pain that caused one's soul to be torn apart was simply not something an ordinary person could endure. Even so, at this moment, Xiao Yan's body did not dare to tense up in the slightest while enduring this extreme pain. Any resistance would affect the benefits that the essence blood brought to him. Therefore, Xiao Yan had to allow his body to perfectly receive this energy without any resistance. The entire process was bound to be extremely painful. Fortunately, what Xiao Yan could endure the most was pain. In order to obtain power, one had to pay a price. If he could not even endure this pain, then this could only prove that Xiao Yan did not have the qualifications to obtain this power. However, the reality was that he had done it. After 4 hours of agonizing torment, the red-scaled python's essence blood within Xiao Yan's body was finally completely exhausted. During this process, Xiao Yan did not make any moves to resist. He allowed the energy contained within the essence blood to explode within his body, absorbing the energy from each destruction. Phew! Feeling the pain that was transmitted from all over his body, Xiao Yan trembled as he exhaled. After 4 hours, the muscles all over his body had involuntarily tensed up. Every muscle cell had expanded by more than a couple of times and the strength hidden within was especially great. At the same time that the essence blood was completely exhausted, it also brought about an extremely great stimulation to Xiao Yan's body.
However, he could even clearly sense that each of his muscle cells was wildly breathing as though they had experienced an intense exercise. Although Xiao Yan had already intentionally relaxed his body, the appearance that this body displayed at this moment still appeared unusually strong. One could imagine how powerful Xiao Yan's physical strength would be when he completely recovered. Only after an hour did Xiao Yan gradually recover. Once again, he sat down cross-legged. However, Xiao Yan was not in a hurry to cultivate his physical strength. The cultivation of one's physical strength originally required a balance between tension and relaxation. Only after a suitable amount of rest could one ensure that one's physical body would not be damaged. As the saying goes, when things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. If one were to rush for success, it could instead affect the foundation of Xiao Yan's body. A thought passed through his mind and the enormous spiritual strength between his brows immediately surged out. In the blink of an eye, it agglomerated into 9 avatars around Xiao Yan's body. Ever since he had left the Zhu family village, Xiao Yan had placed most of his attention on these 9 avatars other than hurrying along the way. With the high-grade spirit stones as a source of energy, the training of the 9 avatars had naturally sped up. Currently, the cultivation of these 9 avatars had all stepped into the middle stage of the 6-star Do D class. Their strength could be said to be extremely powerful. Moreover, when the 9 avatars merged into one, their cultivation had advanced to the next level. They were able to reach the initial stage of the 7-star Do D class. Their fighting strength was undoubtedly much stronger than many ordinary elite Do D. Additionally, they had Xiao Yan's actual body. With the two of them joining hands, their fighting strength was incomparably powerful. With a flick of his finger, 3 rays of light shot out. They were 3 high-grade spirit stones. Under Xiao Yan's intentional concealment, the shocking energy aura within them did not spread outwards. Even the dazzling milky white light from the spirit stones had been completely covered. Just how precious were high-grade spirit stones? Even origin transformation experts would be moved by them. How could Xiao Yan casually take them out? For safety's sake, he had even added the Way of the Void onto them. Not only did it conceal the enormous energy aura contained within the high-grade spirit stones, it also concealed their light. Even though this was the case, Xiao Yan still chose a high spot on the huge rock to prevent others from discovering the spirit stones if they were too close. Soon after, the 3 rays of light each floated in front of the 3 avatars. Under Xiao Yan's guidance, waves of pure energy surged out and swiftly entered the bodies of the 9 avatars. When the sun rose from the distant east the next day, the group that had rested for an entire night had already disappeared. Only a few traces of their departure could be seen on the ground covered in rubble. The group had already begun their journey once again. During the next few days, the journey was still arduous. However, for some unknown reason, everyone's footsteps had become much faster. Along the way, everyone used Xiao Yan as the core and did their best to keep up with the footsteps of this young man. Although the process was even more tiring compared to a couple of days ago, these people were surprised to discover that the strength within their bodies appeared to have become much thicker. In this way, the originally dull and boring journey actually made these people feel more energetic. By noon on the 3rd day, the environment around the group gradually changed. They could see a boundless mountain range at the end of their line of sight. That was where the main hall of the Northern Desolated Hall was located, the Northern Mountain. Chapter 991. At the same time that Xiao Yan passed through the desert, the Southern Hall Master of the Northern Desolation Hall, who had just broken through to the Origin Transformation Realm, was currently standing in the main hall of the Northern Desolation Hall. What did you say? The Southern Hall was destroyed? The Southern Hall of my Northern Desolation Hall was destroyed by a brat. You sure are competent as a hall master. A dignified middle-aged man in embroidered robes sat on the main seat of the hall with a frown on his face. He angrily looked at the Southern Hall Master, who was standing in the center of the hall with his head lowered. His tone was extremely low. The destruction of the Southern Hall was due to this subordinate's negligence, and I am willing to accept the punishment. However, this subordinate was at a critical juncture of breaking through at the time and was unable to do anything else. That is why this disaster happened. I hope that the Hall Master can understand. The Southern Hall Master clasped his hands towards the middle-aged man. His words were an apology, but his tone sounded more like he was asking for credit. Oh, breakthrough? You mean, you broke through to the Origin Transformation Realm? Hearing this, the middle-aged man's eyes narrowed. A light flickered in the depths of his eyes as he asked a question that he already knew the answer to.
Yes, I wasn't in the southern hall at that time. I chose another place to break through. Therefore, I didn't know what happened in the southern hall. When I returned to the city, it was already a mess. I couldn't help but panic. That's why I hurriedly came here to apologize.
The southern hall master lowered his head, but his lips curled into a cold smile.
Asking for forgiveness was bullshit.
If he had not broken through, the person before him would not have spared him so easily. However, now that they were both origin transformation experts, the person before him would definitely be wary of him.
There was no need to ask for forgiveness.
Oh, so that's how it is. The southern hall master revealed an expression of sudden realization. Hearing this, the southern hall master smiled inwardly.
But soon after,
since you have come to beg for forgiveness, why do you have to emphasize that you have broken through to the origin transformation realm?
What do you think I can't tell? Or do you think that I will be wary of you just because you have broken through to the origin transformation realm?
The domineering voice reverberated in the hall.
An extremely powerful aura instantly swept out from the middle-aged man on the main seat. The terrifying pressure caused the entire hall to buzz at this moment.
Boom!
A merciless pressure descended on the South Palace Master's head. Before he could regain his senses, the terrifying power had already pressed down heavily on his body. With a bang, he half knelt on the ground, and his entire body was completely bent.
Humph! The South Hall Master felt a sweetness in his throat after he let out a muffled groan.
A faint fishy sweetness surged up. At the same time, a rich horror crazily surged from the bottom of his heart. It was accompanied by an incomparable shock. He had underestimated the strength of an origin transformation expert.
I don't dare.
Only after enduring the terrifying pressure from the Hall Master with a deathly pale face did the South Hall Master understand that the difference between him and the Hall Master was like the distance between heaven and earth. Even though they were both origin transformation experts, his cultivation was far from being the latter's opponent. If the Hall Master really wanted to attack him, the outcome would be a one-sided slaughter.
Humph!
You'd better put away your thoughts. You have to remember who is the boss in the northern wilderness. If you want to be promoted, you have to see how capable you are.
Glancing coldly at the South Palace Master, the South Palace Master sneered in his heart.
He had been the overlord of the Northern Barren territory for so many years. He had seen all kinds of people and killed all kinds of strong cultivators. If the person in front of him could obey him, he would be his loyal dog. But if not, he could just kill him and raise him again.
Humph,
get up. Now that the Southern Hall has been destroyed, it's too late to say anything. Although you had your reasons, the Southern Hall is still under your jurisdiction. Aside from something like this, you have to be punished. What do you think? Only after a series of cold words did the Hall Master withdraw his pressure.
Since he had achieved his goal of intimidating the South Hall Master, there was obviously no need for him to force the South Hall Master.
Otherwise, it would only backfire, which was not an outcome he wanted to see. At this moment, the South Hall Master was also shocked by the middle-aged man's terrifying cultivation.
He did not dare to refute the man's words, so he immediately nodded in agreement.
If that's the case, I won't make things too difficult for you. Go back and rebuild the Southern Hall. Make those who dared to mock my Northern Desolate Hall pay the price. Make them understand just who is the boss in the Northern Wilderness.
Yes. The South Hall Master respectfully nodded.
His half-kneeling body trembled as he climbed up from the ground. After rebuilding the Southern Hall, I'll punish you by prohibiting you from leaving the Southern Hall for 5 years. No matter what happens, you must remain in the Southern Hall. This will be your punishment for failing to fulfill your duty. What do you think? The Palace Master withdrew his previous cold attitude and spoke in a calm tone. The South Hall Master immediately nodded. Being prohibited from leaving the Southern Hall for 5 years was equivalent to nothing to him. Perhaps this was another way for the Palace Master to subdue the South Hall Master.
After a few more words, the South Hall Master left the hall under the signal of the middle-aged man on the main seat.
In the blink of an eye, the huge hall became empty again. The middle-aged man sat silently on the chair, frowning slightly. His right index finger, which was placed on the armrest, gently tapped on it, as if he was waiting for something.
Chee! Suddenly, in a dark corner of the hall, a faint and strange fog suddenly rose. It was like a ghost, passing through the stone pillars that supported the hall, and the lights on them were extinguished at the same time.
TSK 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 TSK. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. Xiao Yan, I didn't expect you to survive in the ancient tomb and come to the northern region. A strange laughter came from the black fog. When the palace master heard this voice, he unconsciously twisted his body. Given his temperament, he was also afraid of this thing that was neither human nor ghost. He is the person you are looking for? The palace master's emotionless voice came out of his mouth. Looking at the strange black fog that was approaching him, the palace master did not hide the disgust in his eyes. The longer he interacted with them, the more he could feel their disgust. TSK 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 TSK. That's right, we have been waiting for him for a long time. The person who is targeted by you will definitely have a terrible ending. The palace master said without any fear. TSK 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 TSK. Palace master, we will need your help next. As long as you can capture him, the higher-ups will be very satisfied with you. I only ask about the reward. Without any formalities, the palace master asked the question he was most concerned about. Yuan Wang. The strange laughter was once again emitted from the black fog. This time around, even the middle-aged man's expression involuntarily changed. In the past, when he worked for these fellows, he was at the very most able to obtain a small portion of the benefits. However, it was unexpected that capturing a small doe this time around would actually give him such an exciting benefit. What is the identity of this brat? He is actually worth all of you paying such a price for his life? Tisk TSK TSK. Palace master, the higher-ups do not like people who talk too much. A dark and cold voice was emitted from the black fog. Immediately, the cluster of black fog drifted away. In the blink of an eye, it once again disappeared into the dark corner of the hall. Chapter 992. 2 days later, Xiao Yan stood at the foot of the northern mountains. The northern mountains before him would become the greatest obstacle he would encounter in the northern sea. It was for no other reason than the colossus that stood there. The northern desolate hall. As long as he could cross the northern mountains, the rest of his journey would be much easier. Although this was the case, Xiao Yan felt an inexplicable anxiety in his heart when he arrived at the foot of the northern wasteland mountain. Perhaps it was because the northern wasteland hall leader was an origin transformation expert, but Xiao Yan felt an invisible pressure from the outside world. Although the pressure was not heavy, it had already descended onto Xiao Yan's shoulders the moment he arrived. The heavy pressure caused Xiao Yan's breathing to involuntarily become a little hurried. Is this the power of an origin transformation expert? Even if they don't purposely release their pressure, they're still able to make others feel pressured despite being so far away. An origin transformation expert can truly be described as terrifying. Xiao Yan could not help but exclaim inside. He took in 2 deep breaths of the fresh air in the forest and followed the path left behind by the people before him. His footsteps were steady as he quickly advanced. Although the rest of the journey was not very far, the invisible pressure was still enough to make people feel fearful. Occasionally, there would be people walking past on both sides of the road. Xiao Yan was not the only one who was walking back and forth between the 2 places. However, the thing that caused Xiao Yan to feel surprised was that the people walking beside him did not appear to be affected by this pressure. Xiao Yan was surprised by this, but he also believed that it was because these people had been traveling between the 2 places for so long that they had become accustomed to it. However, this thought that was suspended in Xiao Yan's heart quickly disappeared. This was because he clearly saw the doubtful gazes that the passers-by around him threw at him. As Xiao Yan's footsteps continued to advance, the pressure above his head also became increasingly powerful. Within a short half an hour, each of Xiao Yan's steps had become incomparably heavy. Each time his foot landed, it would leave behind an inch-deep footprint on the ground. With the flow of time, the depth of the footprint was gradually increasing. God damn it, what's going on? The increasingly powerful pressure above his head caused Xiao Yan to feel an uneasiness in his heart. This kind of deliberate pressure was as though someone was intentionally pressuring him. Could it be? Thinking up to there, Xiao Yan's footsteps immediately came to a halt. He raised his solemn face and stared at the towering mountain before him. If the pressure was not directed at everyone, then only the person at the top of the mountain could give him the answer. You've discovered me?
While Xiao Yan was raising his head, a middle-aged man, whose body was leaning against a chair in the main hall of the northern wasteland hall at the top of the northern mountain, slowly opened his gently shut eyes. The corner of his mouth was lifted into a cold smile as a faint voice was emitted from his mouth.
At the same time, it landed in Xiao Yan's ears. Buzz! Xiao Yan's heart immediately felt as though it had been struck by lightning. His expression changed.
His body shook and the pressure above his head was suddenly removed.
His footsteps changed and he instantly used the sky extinction steps. His body flew backward like a ghost. Damn it! It's the Hall Chief of the Northern Desolate Hall. How did he know that I am here? Xiao Yan was greatly shocked in his heart. The speed at which he retreated became even faster.
In the blink of an eye, his body had already appeared out of the sight of the surrounding passers-by.
This speed could be considered unparalleled among the elite Dou Di.
This brat actually removed my pressure so easily.
His speed is also so fast. He is indeed not someone that an ordinary Dou Di can compare with. The Northern Desolate Hall Chief could not help but feel surprised in his heart as he exclaimed.
Even though this was the case, the cold smile that hung on the corner of his mouth did not disappear.
Regardless of how strong you are among the Dou Di class, a mere Dou Di is just like an ant in front of this Hall Chief.
At the same time that the cold laughter sounded, Xiao Yan's body, which was currently swiftly retreating at a lightning-like speed, suddenly became sluggish.
The pressure above his head instantly pressed down. An incomparable force instantly caused Xiao Yan's body to be stunned and rooted to the spot. Regardless of how Xiao Yan struggled against the frightening strength, it was useless. Immediately, the empty space in front of Xiao Yan slowly became distorted. A middle-aged man wearing a brocade robe appeared in front of him. It was the Hall Chief of the Northern Desolate Hall.
Humph!
It is unexpected that you actually dare to deliver yourself to my doorstep.
You have saved this Hall Chief the effort to find you.
The middle-aged man's gaze swept up and down Xiao Yan's body. Immediately, he could not help but raise his eyebrows.
The immaturity of this black-robed young man in front of him caused him to be extremely surprised. It was very difficult to imagine that this young brat in front of him was actually the prey in the eyes of that group of people.
Just what was so special about him? You can be considered to have some ability to forcefully endure the pressure of this Hall Chief without collapsing. However, that is all there is to it. The middle-aged man withdrew his gaze and faintly mocked. Soon after, he gently waved his sleeve. A frightening strength immediately swept forward like a tsunami and heavily smashed into Xiao Yan's chest. Bang! Immediately, Xiao Yan's entire chest violently caved in. A large number of ribs in front of his chest suddenly broke. Even his internal organs suffered quite a lot of damage. His frail figure flew backwards like a broken sack. After drawing a parabola in the air, he heavily smashed into the ground. His originally serious face instantly became deathly pale. Fresh blood sprayed out as if it was free. His entire aura became weak in the blink of an eye.
The shock in his heart could not be any greater.
At this moment, Xiao Yan no longer had the time to consider how the person in front of him had discovered his identity. He knew that if he did not resist, it would be difficult for him to escape death today.
With a thought, the bloodline power in his body immediately erupted.
The Golden Elephant Technique and the Force Elephant Technique were completely activated.
The heavenly flame within the vortex swept out without any reservation.
Facing an origin transformation expert, if he dared to hold back in the slightest, it would bring about a devastating blow to him. However, you have quite a few tricks up your sleeve.
However, brat, you still don't understand just how insignificant a so-called Dou Di is in the eyes of an origin transformation expert.
Seeing that Xiao Yan had used all his strength to display all his techniques, the middle-aged man in front of him continued to mock him. At the instant that Xiao Yan stood up, the middle-aged man's extended palm opened in the air with his palm facing downwards. A palm gently slammed downwards. At the same time, Xiao Yan's body, which was covered by the heavenly flame, was smashed heavily into the ground by an extremely frightening strength. Chapter 993. Even though Xiao Yan had used all his strength, there was nothing he could do in the face of the absolute strength of the Northern Wasteland's Hall Master, an origin transformation expert. Bang! Xiao Yan's body, which was wrapped in heavenly flames, slammed heavily into the ground.
The flow of Dou Qi in his body and the support of the heavenly flames were instantly severed.
Xiao Yan's strength was like a child's play in front of the middle-aged man. With just a wave of his hand, Xiao Yan was once again defeated by the middle-aged man. Incomparable shock rose in Xiao Yan's heart.
The strength of the middle-aged man was the only one he had seen among all his opponents along the way.
Even though he still had some strength left, he already felt powerless against this kind of strength. This was proof of the saying that in the face of absolute power, all means were useless. In the past, this saying was usually given to his opponents. Now, however, the tables had finally turned and it was given back to Xiao Yan.
Brat, things haven't come to an end yet.
You can't fall like this. At this moment, Xiao Xian's solemn voice finally sounded from the depths of Xiao Yan's body. Along with it was the latter's extremely enormous spiritual strength. Rank 5 spiritual strength. Brat, you must stand up. You must remember that your wife has fallen into the hands of your opponent. She is still waiting for you to rescue her. As a man, you must stand up now. No matter how strong the opponent in front of you is, you still have me to face it with you. Stand up. The order sounded within Xiao Yan's heart. The latter's body, which was crushed under the ground, immediately began to tremble intensely. Surging dough qi surged wildly, shattering the surrounding rock fragments into a pile of rock powder. His body, which had fallen to the ground, also straightened and slowly stood up. Bas! In an instant, the vast spiritual strength turned into an invisible wave that swept out in all directions with Xiao Yan at the center. The frightening pressure that descended on Xiao Yan's head was once again forcefully blocked by the latter. His body, which had fallen, once again stood up. There is actually another spirit hidden in your body? Humph. It is merely an unorthodox method. The borrowed strength is ultimately not yours. Even if you have a rank 5 spirit in your body, it still cannot change the fact that you are a Dou Di. The middle-aged man rubbed his eyebrows in surprise. Then he sneered. How do you know if you don't try?
A low roar was emitted from Xiao Yan's mouth the instant he lifted his head. Almost at the same time, his feet heavily stomped on the ground as a frightening energy poured out. The ground beneath Xiao Yan's body directly exploded as his body transformed into a pitch-black ray of light. Just like a ghost, he violently charged towards the middle-aged man. Humph! Stubborn. With a cold snort, the middle-aged man's body also shot forward in an instant. His right hand clenched into a fist and fiercely collided with Xiao Yan's head-on attack. Bas! The surging spiritual strength was like the waves of the sea as it swept across the area. The rapidly charging figure of the middle-aged man immediately slowed down in Xiao Yan's mind. At the same time that Xiao Yan's right hand was clenched into a fist, the spiritual strength in his left hand crazily surged, agglomerating into an invisible hand that grabbed at the middle-aged man in front of him. Towering hand. Xiao Yan let out a low cry in his heart. However, in the blink of an eye, the invisible hand had already firmly grasped the middle-aged man's body. The latter's charging figure also paused for an instant. After which, he easily broke through the control of the towering hand. Spiritual strength? Just as the middle-aged man was feeling surprised in his heart, Xiao Yan's body instantly appeared in front of him like a ghost. His right fist struck out and heavily smashed into the middle-aged man's chest. Bang! A muffled thud was heard as the expression on Xiao Yan's face instantly froze. The moment his fist landed, surging Genesis Qi rapidly gathered at the middle-aged man's chest. In the blink of an eye, it formed a circular shield that easily blocked Xiao Yan's attack. However, the latter's punch did not hold back at all as it landed on Xiao Yan's body. Bang! When the punch landed, the black robe on Xiao Yan's upper body burst apart with a bang. His entire chest violently sunk inwards. Fresh bright red blood was spat out from his mouth. The strength that had just gathered in his body was once again scattered by the impact. This time, Xiao Yan's body finally collapsed. I've already said that even if you have rank 5 spiritual strength, a Dou Di is still a Dou Di. The gap between you and me cannot be made up for with external objects. The middle-aged man took heavy steps and approached Xiao Yan step by step. This time around, the latter's body was completely limp on the ground. The methods of the person in front of him were far beyond his imagination. Originally, he thought that he could temporarily control the latter with the help of his spiritual strength. However, Xiao Yan did not expect that the person in front of him was not affected by the heaven-reaching hand. Although you are not worth mentioning in my eyes, I still have to praise you. You are the first person in so many years to be able to touch my body with your Dou Di cultivation. Although he clearly knew that he had to kill Xiao Yan in front of him, what the middle-aged man had said was the truth. At the very least, no Dou Di had dared to attack him in the past, much less touch his body in a fight. Ahem. Then should I feel honored? Forcefully supporting his body with great difficulty,
Xiao Yan crazily agglomerated the scattered dou qi in his body in an attempt to launch a final attack. In the face of life and death, Xiao Yan was definitely not an indecisive person. At the same time, Xiao Yan, who was deep within his body, had already made preparations. Once the person in front of him tried to kill Xiao Yan, he would use all of his spiritual strength to try and delay the latter so that Xiao Yan would have the opportunity to escape. However, just as the middle-aged man arrived within 10 feet of Xiao Yan, his expression involuntarily changed. He suddenly withdrew his foot that was originally lifted. At the same time, his body also swiftly withdrew. Bang! Just as his body withdrew, the ground where the middle-aged man's foot had landed a moment ago suddenly exploded. A shocking explosion resounded through the clouds. The middle-aged man's expression also became gloomy at this moment. After his body came to a stop, he lifted his gaze. His gloomy gaze quickly locked onto a black-robed figure high in the sky. You are also an origin transformation expert. Don't tell me that you want to go against my northern desolate hall for a mere dou di? The middle-aged man's tone was deep. His cold words contained a warning. In the entire northern desolate region, even an origin transformation expert would not easily interfere when the northern desolate hall was mentioned. His words could already be considered a threat. Haha, you injured my people and even threatened me not to interfere. Do you really think that the northern desolate region belongs to you, Qin Su? Chapter 994. His calm laughter was filled with a domineering aura. What kind of power was the Northern Wastelands Palace? It could be said to be the most powerful power in the Northern Wastelands. However, the black-robed man's voice was filled with disdain. From this point alone, it could be confirmed that the black-robed man was definitely not an ordinary person. With regards to this point, Qin Su, who was on the ground below, immediately thought of it. There were not many people in the Northern Wastelands who could directly call out his name in such a tone. However, he seemed to have never heard of the person in front of him. In fact, even the other party's voice sounded so unfamiliar. What made Qin Su most suspicious was the person's words just now. He clearly said that the black-robed young man in front of him was one of his people. However, according to what he knew, Xiao Yan was clearly alone and did not have any power behind him. Of course, Qin Su was not the only one who was shocked by the latter's identity. Xiao Yan was also extremely shocked. The voice that came from the sky was still fresh in his memory. From the sound of it, it was clearly the sloppy old man who wanted to compensate him with pills a few days ago in the Scarlet Desert. It's actually him. At this moment, Xiao Yan's and Xiao Xian's hearts were filled with surprise. It was unexpected that this person, whom they had only met once, would intervene and save them at such a critical moment. However, just like Qin Su, Xiao Yan was also filled with suspicion. He had never joined any power. Sir, you said that this kid is one of your people? On the ground, Qin Su's face was gloomy. His purpose was to bring Xiao Yan back, but he did not expect that someone would interrupt them halfway. This made him extremely unhappy. Why, do you have a problem with it? As he spoke, the figure had already appeared in front of Xiao Yan. Without any explanation, he directly stuffed a pill into Xiao Yan's mouth. Afterwards, he turned his head to look at Qin Su behind him. While Xiao Yan was feeling shocked in his heart, Qin Su's dark and solemn gaze had also landed on the black-robed human figure in front of him. He was just about to open his mouth and ask when his gaze noticed the shiny badge on the latter's chest. The expression on his face instantly changed drastically. That badge belonged to the Alchemist Alliance. It was not only a representation of the latter's identity, but also a symbol of their status. An origin transformation expert who was also a member of the Alchemist Alliance. With his cultivation and identity, he would be an existence equivalent to the vice-chairman of the Alchemist Alliance. Alchemist Alliance. The muscles at the corner of Qin Su's eyes could not help but twitch. He clearly knew that although the Northern Wastelands Hall was an overlord in the Northern Wastelands, there were still quite a few low-key powers in the Northern Wastelands. The foundations of these powers were so great that even the Northern Wastelands Hall had to treat them with respect. As for the Alchemist Alliance, it was publicly acknowledged as a great power that could not be made an enemy of. This was because behind the Alchemist Alliance stood the strongest supreme power on the continent. The Pill Tower. Damn it, why would someone from the Alchemist Alliance help this kid? Qin Su cursed in his heart. At the same time, he hated that damn thing for not telling him Xiao Yan's identity as an alchemist. Otherwise,
he would have considered this point. So, do you still want to kill him now? The old man's expression was calm. His hands were behind his back as he calmly stared at Chin Su and spoke at a steady pace. The expression on Chin Su's face alternated between green and white upon hearing these words. Forget about the fact that the other party was also an origin transformation expert. Just the latter's identity alone was sufficient to cause fear to form in his heart.
It was impossible for him to kill Xiao Yan now. However, when he thought about the allure of the Origin King realm, Chin Su could not help but waver. As long as he became a Origin King expert, even the Alchemist Alliance would not be able to do anything to him. Even if the Pill Tower sent people, the continent was so large that he could still run if he could not defeat them. Currently, the most important thing was Xiao Yan.
As long as he could capture him, he would have the opportunity to become a Origin King expert.
So it is a friend from the Alchemist Alliance. Since you have stepped forward, I will naturally not attack this kid.
However, Grandmaster, you may have saved the people from the Alchemist Alliance, but do you think that the people from my Northern Wasteland Hall can only die in the hands of this kid?
In the past month, over 10 elite Do-D from my Northern Wasteland Hall have died in the hands of this kid. Among them is a deputy hall leader of my Northern Wasteland Hall. If I do not settle this debt, how will I, Chin Su, be able to convince everyone in the future? How will the Northern Wasteland Hall continue to be maintained? Chin Su's eyes flickered.
He mused for a moment before slowly opening his mouth. The old man narrowed his eyes when he heard this.
His gaze stared intently at Chin Su.
He hesitated for a moment before asking, "Then what do you want?"
Why don't you hand him over to me first and allow me to bring him back? Let him personally apologize to the heroic spirits in my hall. After that, I will release him after appeasing the others in the hall. What do you say? Chin Su hurriedly continued the conversation. This was exactly what he wanted. Humph, do you think that I am a fool?
If I really hand him over to you, whether you can bring him back or not is another matter.
Do you not trust my Northern Wasteland Hall? Chin Su frowned and said in a deep voice. Why should I trust you? Just because of your status as the Northern Wasteland Hall leader?
Humph, I don't think I need to say more about the reputation of your Northern Wasteland Hall in the Northern Wasteland.
Do you think that you are worthy to talk about credibility with me?
Don't go overboard. Don't tell me that the people from my Northern Wasteland Hall have died in vain. Chin Su was immediately furious when these words were spoken. He took a step forward and a powerful aura immediately pressed forward. The black-robed old man waved his large sleeve and a large flame immediately shot forward. It forced Chin Su back by 100 steps. The frightening flame even burned most of the brocade robe that Chin Su was wearing, causing him to appear extremely miserable. This is the way of fire. Damn it, this old fellow has actually mastered the way of fire.
Chin Su's expression changed.
The strength of the old man before him was much greater than he had imagined.
Do you still want to try? I haven't fought with anyone in many years. Why don't I use this opportunity to exercise my limbs? Chin Su had just stabilized his body when the old man in front of him took a step forward. A terrifying aura immediately pressed down on Chin Su and the latter's face revealed an even more shocked expression. While he hurriedly retreated, he could not help but cry out in alarm. Late Origin Transformation Realm. Chapter 995.
Under the intimidation of the old man's frightening cultivation, Chin Su immediately did not dare to stay any longer.
He clearly understood the gap between him and the old man. If they were to really fight, it would be troublesome. After Chin Su left, Xiao Yan also stood up from the ground.
With the medicinal pill that the old man fed him, the injuries in his body were quickly suppressed.
The light injuries had already been completely healed and only some of his internal organs and bones had suffered damage. It was likely that he would need some time to slowly recover. Fortunately, Chin Su's attack did not cause any irreparable damage to Xiao Yan. Junior Xiao Yan thanks Elder for saving my life. After standing up, Xiao Yan immediately bowed to the old man in front of him. He did not expect that this old man would actually help him after just meeting him once. This really caused Xiao Yan to feel grateful from the bottom of his heart. Of course, part of this was naturally due to the old man's identity. However, what caused Xiao Yan to be curious was that he seemed to have never heard of such a person within the Alchemist Alliance. He had also never come into contact with the Alchemist Alliance in the northern region. Therefore, at this moment, the identity of this old man had become the main point that Xiao Yan was concerned about.
Ha ha ha, little fellow, you are not bad. You are even able to fight against that old fellow. Among all the Do-D that I have seen, you are the most outstanding one. The quality of your body is also not bad. After eating my medicinal pill, you are actually able to stand up so quickly.
Not bad, not bad.
After continuously praising, the old man clearly understood in his heart that although his medicinal pill had helped Xiao Yan recover from the injuries in his body, the fact that Xiao Yan was able to recover so much in such a short period of time was not only because of the medicinal pill's strength. More importantly, it was because of the quality of his body.
Elder is too kind.
This little trick of mine is nothing in the eyes of that guy. Xiao Yan shook his head with a bitter smile on his face.
After that brief collision, he knew that Qin Su's strength was far above his. The latter's strength could be said to have completely crushed him. Indeed, in the face of absolute power, any fancy moves were useless. Haha, it's an honorable defeat. You're quite modest.
Even if you're not the first person on the continent to be able to punch an origin transformation expert with the strength of a Do-D, you're definitely one of the few.
You can accept this. A loud laugh sounded.
Immediately, the old man changed the topic in front of Xiao Yan's surprised eyes and said once again, "Also, little guy, you don't have to call me senior anymore.
This old man isn't some nameless senior. You have to call me President. Got it?"
President.
President. Xiao Yan was taken aback.
Although he knew that the old man was a member of the Alchemist Alliance, where did the matter of the president come from?
Hee hee. Looks like Han Dong hasn't introduced me to you yet. I'm Xing Qian, the president of the Western Region Alchemist Alliance. You joined my Alchemist Alliance through Han Dong, so don't you think you should call me president? The old man laughed. Xiao Yan's expression immediately changed when he heard this. Surprise immediately surged into his eyes. He had never expected that the chairman of the Alchemist Alliance, who had disappeared without a trace in the Western region, would actually appear in the Northern region. This really caused one to feel surprised. Xiao Yan's expression changed when he heard this. He could not help but sigh. This world was really small. It was really a small world. Fortunately, if he had not run into the old man, Xiao Yan probably would not have been able to escape death today. Xiao Yan had obviously heard of Xinggan's name before.
After all, he was one of the 3 peak origin transformation experts in the Western region, the president of the Alchemist Alliance, and a Class 6 alchemist.
How could Xiao Yan not know of such an identity?
However, now that he had personally seen him, Xiao Yan still found it hard to believe that the crazy old man he had seen not too long ago was actually the president of the Alchemist Alliance.
Junior Xiao Yan greets the president. When Xing Qian heard this, he immediately laughed heartily. However, he immediately put on a serious expression and said, "I'm sorry, but I don't think I'll be able to defeat you." Not bad, kid. However, don't think that you won't return the pill you owe me just because of this. I still remember this matter. Ha ha ha. Xiao Yan could not help but curl his lips when he heard this.
As the president of the Alchemist Alliance and a Class 6 alchemist, why did he have to make things difficult for a junior like him?
At the same time, Xiao Yan also came to a realization. No wonder Xinggan had asked him for those 4 medicinal pills back then. It was likely because of the great Tao strength that Xinggan had grasped. The Grand Tao of Fire was firm and ferocious. It was ranked at the top of all the Grand Taos, and it was precisely because of this that it was rather difficult to grasp. On the other hand, the 4 types of medicinal pills just happened to be the best medicinal pills to fuse with flames. Consuming them would naturally be beneficial towards condensing the Grand Tao of Fire. Hee hee, kid, I see that you're heading north. You're probably going to the Northern Sea, right? Xinggan had obviously seen through Xiao Yan's goal as he followed him along the way. From the fact that Xiao Yan wanted to pass through the northern mountain range, Xinggan's goal was definitely the most resolute. Otherwise, he would not have insisted on going to the Tiger Mountain range despite knowing that it was dangerous. Xiao Yan gently nodded when he heard that. Xinggan could not help but suck in a deep breath as a serious light flashed through the depths of his eyes. Kid, the Northern Sea is not like the Northern Wasteland. Once you get there, you have to be extremely careful. I can't help you with anything, but I can tell you that while someone like Qin Su can stir up trouble in the Northern Wasteland, he's only a minor character in the Northern Sea. Xiao Yan's expression immediately changed when these words were uttered. Even an origin transformation expert like Qin Su could only be considered a small character. Just how frightening was the interior of the Northern Sea? Thank you for telling me, President, but I've already made up my mind. I'll definitely go to the Northern Sea. Xiao Yan solemnly clasped his fist. His face was filled with gratitude, but the goal in his heart remained firm. I know that you won't change your path, so that's all I can tell you. Although I can't help you with much, let me send you on your way so that that guy won't give up. Once we pass through here and you're safe, I'll leave to do my own things. Then I'll thank you, President. Xiao Yan smiled. Soon after, Xingan extended a hand and placed it on Xiao Yan's shoulder. The latter slowly closed his eyes. At the same time, the two of them began to gently ripple like water. In the blink of an eye, the two of them disappeared from the northern mountain range as if they had never appeared in the first place. At the same time, in the northern wastelands hall, Qin Su, who had retreated in a fluster, cast his gloomy gaze towards a dark corner of the hall. After the two of them left, a ball of black fog slowly rose from that corner. Chapter 996. You still have the face to show yourself. This time, Qin Su did not hold back. With a wave of his sleeve, an unparalleled force immediately shot out and struck the black fog that had floated out from the dark corner. Chi! The force was quietly dissolved by the energy that surged out from the black fog. At the same time, a hoarse voice was emitted from within. Palace Master, why are you so angry? Even we did not know about this matter. We did not expect that someone from the Alchemist Alliance would actually save him. This brat is really lucky. Humph, why didn't you show yourself earlier? If the two of us joined hands, would we be afraid of him alone? Now that you have seen your prey escape from under your nose, are you happy? Qin Su's heart was filled with anger. If it wasn't for the fact that this thing in front of him that was neither human nor ghost was timid, Xiao Yan would have already fallen into their trap and the reward that they had promised him would have already landed in his hands. He would not be in this situation where he was actually chased away by the other party. Palace Master, you should understand that in the situation just now, once I show myself, my identity and location will immediately be exposed. At that time, the various factions will shift their attention to this place. Not only will we be exposed in front of everyone, even your northern wasteland palace will definitely become the target of everyone. At that time, forget about capturing Xiao Yan, it will be extremely difficult to even protect yourself. We have prepared in the northern region for so many years. We definitely cannot lose everything because of a moment of recklessness. Otherwise, even if we can hide from these people, once the higher-ups punish us, both of us will not be able to escape death. When these words were spoken, the expression on Qin Su's face was slightly startled. After pondering for a while, he coldly snorted and said, Now that that brat has escaped, what should we do next? After leaving this place, we will have no idea of his whereabouts and will not be able to find him for the time being. As for this matter, I will report it to the higher-ups. Let's leave it at that for the time being. A voice that sounded like an order was emitted from the black fog. When Qin Su heard this, the expression on his face became somewhat unnatural. However, in the end, he remained silent and did not say anything. In the blink of an eye, 1.5 months had passed. After a month of bumpy travel, Xiao Yan finally arrived at the extreme north of the northern wilderness, which was also the North Sea. The boundless sea filled Xiao Yan's eyes. Waves rolled on the surface of the sea, and the sound of crashing against the shore could be heard incessantly. Above the dark blue sky, there were large pagoda-like clouds that were as white as milk. From time to time, seabirds would fly past the surface of the sea, and their reflections in the water would complement each other. At this moment, the thing that appeared in front of Xiao Yan's eyes was an enormous city that sat on the surface of the sea with the exception of the endless sea on both sides. Beijun City. This was the last checkpoint to enter the North Sea. At the same time, everyone who wanted to enter the North Sea had to pass through this checkpoint. Beijun City bordered the North Sea to the north and the Northern Barren Territory to the south. It was the main route between the North Sea and the Northern Barren Territory. People from the Northern Barren Territory could not enter the North Sea without Beijun City. At the same time, people from the North Sea could not return to the Northern Barren Territory. The reason for this was because the North Sea was so vast that even a Dodi could not easily pass through it. If one wanted to travel between the two places, one would need to be at least at the Origin Transformation Realm. Just this point alone was enough to show how vast the North Sea was. Therefore, any expert below the Origin Transformation Realm could only travel by boat if they wanted to pass through the North Sea. In the entire Northern Barren Territory, all the boats that entered the North Sea were under the control of a company called Ryuzawa Square in Beijun City.
It could be said that almost all the boats on the sea were under the control of Ryuzawa Square. It was also because of this that Ryuzawa Square became the #1 power in Beijing City. After arriving in front of the city gate, Xiao Yan was able to see a gray-robed old man guarding the city gate at a glance. From the latter's aura, he was clearly a 6-star Do D. This kind of cultivation could already be considered extremely powerful in this place. At a glance, Xiao Yan could see a boat-shaped badge on the old man's chest. This was the symbol of Ryuzawa Square. This old man was someone from Ryuzawa Square. At this moment, every person who entered the city had to pay 50 low-tier spirit stones. Xiao Yan was no exception as he walked closer and paid the spirit stones. The gray-robed old man in front of him seemed to have seen that the young man in front of him was not an ordinary person.
He cupped his hands together and smiled. "Mister, there is a relay station that I have set up in Ryuzawa Square at the center of the city. You can rest there. Thank you for the information. Also, I would like to ask, where can I board a boat that enters the North Sea from Beijing City?" With a smile, Xiao Yan asked in a flat tone. "Mister, you have come at a bad time today. The nearest boat is currently under repair and the departure time will be delayed. Please wait for a few days. Once the boat is repaired, we will be able to depart."
Hearing this, the gray-robed old man cupped his hands together and said apologetically,
"Delayed." His brows furrowed. He did not expect his luck to be so bad. He had just arrived at Beijing City and he actually encountered such a situation. "How long will it take for your boat to be repaired?" With a frown, Xiao Yan asked again. "I am not too sure about this. Our boat is supported by a formation. Because it has been in use for too long, it often needs to be repaired. I am not proficient in the repair of boats. I only know that it used to take 3 to 5 days. If it takes longer, it might take 10 days to half a month. I hope Mr. will forgive me. If Mr. does not mind, you can stay in the city for a few days and there should be a result." The gray-robed old man shook his head helplessly and smiled bitterly. "Formation, huh?" Xiao Yan muttered softly. Immediately after thanking the old man, he entered the city. Seeing Xiao Yan enter the city, the old man helplessly shook his head again and bitterly sighed in his heart. After experiencing so many attacks from the sea beasts, the damage to the boat this time seems to be not small. Otherwise, with the president's ability, he would not need to invite other formation masters to help. However, those guys are not easy to invite. They are a group of tigers and wolves. After entering the city, Xiao Yan somewhat helplessly walked into the city. His heart recalled the words that the old man had said earlier. Finally, he helplessly sighed. Xiao Yan did not listen to the old man's suggestion. He randomly found a wine shop in the city and planned to rest for a day to eliminate the fatigue he had accumulated from traveling for over a month. He would wait until the next day to inquire about the situation. Chapter 997. The next day. When the first ray of sunlight shone through the window onto the bed, Xiao Yan, who had slept soundly for an entire night, slowly woke up. The deep sleep completely expelled the fatigue that Xiao Yan had accumulated over the past 1.5 months. His entire being, from his body to his soul, felt much more relaxed. This kind of comfortable feeling was something that he had not felt for a long time. It is time to go to the city to take a look. I wonder how long it will take for the ship to be repaired. By the time he left the restaurant, the streets outside were already filled with pedestrians. The noise did not stop. The entire city had entered a new day of bustle. Walking among the crowd, Xiao Yan, who was wearing a black robe, appeared inconspicuous. However, his sharp eyesight was something that an ordinary person did not possess. Not only was there a post set up by Ryuzawa Square in the center of the city, there was also a manager of Ryuzawa Square. When he went there, Xiao Yan would be able to obtain some information that he wanted to know. In a short period of time, a large number of lofts in the center of the city appeared in Xiao Yan's line of sight. Without exception, the lofts all had the signboard of Ryuzawa Square hanging on them. Moreover, the area that these lofts occupied was the best location in the northern military city. It must be said that this move by Ryuzawa Square could be said to be very generous. Xiao Yan could not help but exclaim in his heart. Just as he was about to continue walking forward, a sharp aura was suddenly transmitted from the end of the street behind him. The owner of that aura was surprisingly a 7-star Do D. At this moment, the latter's body was flying through the air. His feet unceremoniously stepped on the shoulders of the pedestrians in front of him,
and his body borrowed the force to charge forward.
Although this person's actions appeared overbearing, most of the people in the city chose to endure in the face of the ladder's strength.
This was especially true for some of the passers-by who knew this person.
They even threw disgusted and fearful gazes at the ladder.
Seeing the rapidly approaching figure, the passers-by around Xiao Yan consciously retreated.
In the blink of an eye, Xiao Yan was the only one left on the street. Xiao Yan frowned.
Just as he was about to dodge, the figure had already arrived above Xiao Yan's head and stomped down heavily.
This time, it was actually aimed at the top of Xiao Yan's head. Be a good stepping stone for me. I don't want to dirty my shoes.
A sharp and domineering voice came from above.
The figure did not care about other people's feelings at all. He did what he wanted, and his heavy feet were about to stomp down.
Humph! A deep and cold snort sounded.
The person above his head was fast, but Xiao Yan was even faster.
Just as the foot was about to land, Xiao Yan's fist suddenly shot upward and violently smashed into the center of the foot that the human figure was about to step down.
A frightening strength immediately poured out. With another soft cracking sound, the entire leg of the human figure above Xiao Yan's head was immediately twisted. The bones were broken and the human figure's face instantly revealed a painful expression.
Ah!
He had never imagined that he, who had always been untouchable in the northern military city, would kick an iron plate today. Moreover, the rebound force of this iron plate was so frightening. The figure's body flew backwards uncontrollably. Immediately after, his entire body fell miserably on the street.
A painful groan sounded from his mouth, attracting the attention of the surrounding passers-by. Seeing that this person was punished, many of the passers-by laughed bitterly in their hearts.
This person only had himself to blame for today's outcome. I think your person is dirtier than your shoes. With a disdainful and mocking tone, Xiao Yan waved his sleeves and stood with his hands behind his back. His eyes were filled with coldness. Bastard! Wild brat! How dare you hurt me? I want you to die! Resisting the intense pain from his leg, the figure climbed up from the ground.
With a wave of his sleeve, a sharp douqi light suddenly shot forward, directly towards Xiao Yan.
In response, Xiao Yan casually raised his hand and flicked his finger. An invisible force shot forward, easily destroying the opponent's attack.
Damn it!
After cursing fiercely, the figure raised his head, revealing the face of a middle-aged man. His skin was as thin as bone, and his eyes were sunken. No matter how one looked at it, he looked like a person who lacked energy. One could imagine how he spent his daily life.
His two hands quickly formed a seal, and a huge amount of soul energy gushed out from between his eyebrows.
It turned into a golden light, condensing into a small array in front of him. Immediately after, a sharp golden light shot out, once again meeting Xiao Yan. Oh, you're actually an array master? Unfortunately, you don't want to improve yourself. You're just a cripple. Xiao Yan randomly glanced at them. Other than disdain, there was nothing else in Xiao Yan's heart. With a wave of his sleeve, an invisible force also gushed forward, turning into a storm. In an instant, it annihilated the golden light, and the terrifying force easily broke the array in front of the middle-aged man. Immediately after, the invisible force turned into a sharp blade, falling in front of the middle-aged man's throat. The latter was immediately terrified. Just as he was about to fight back, a bone-chilling voice slowly came out from Xiao Yan's mouth.
If you dare to move again, I'll cut your head off. The moment the words left his mouth, the middle-aged man's body violently trembled.
The invisible blade trembled as well, leaving behind a ghastly wound on his neck. This caused the latter's body to immediately freeze on the spot like a statue, not moving at all.
Sir, I hope you can show mercy.
However, at this moment, behind Xiao Yan, on the other side of Ryuzawa Square, following a shout, the sound of wind breaking could be heard. In the blink of an eye, 4 old men appeared on Xiao Yan's left and right.
One of the old men in a yellow robe quickly cupped his hands towards Xiao Yan and said respectfully, Sir, Master Jean is the array master invited by Ryuzawa Square to repair the ship this time.
I hope you can let him go for the sake of Ryuzawa Square.
After all, the ship is related to the journey of many people to the North Sea, so I hope you can put the interests of the majority of the people in the city first. The gazes of quite a number of people on the street involuntarily landed on Xiao Yan when these words of the old man were uttered.
Currently, there were so many people in the city who were waiting for the ship to be repaired. Once Xiao Yan attacked and killed this so-called Grandmaster Jean, he would definitely become the target of everyone. In this way, the losses would outweigh the gains. In this case, this guy surnamed Jean was not easy to kill. Everyone frowned. They also hoped that this guy surnamed Jean would pay the price, but from the looks of it, their idea was not going to work. Even Xiao Yan could not help but frown slightly. When the old man noticed this, he immediately struck while the iron was hot and spoke again. Sir, you must also be a traveler to the North Sea. In this case, please put your own journey first. Don't delay your journey for such a small matter. Humph, kid, kill me if you have the guts. Let's see if you will become the target of public criticism and pay the price for this. Huang Quan, let me tell you, I can repair the ship without half of the reward this time, but I will not allow him to board the ship. Otherwise, Chi! An insolent and strange laughter was emitted from the middle-aged man's mouth. However, before he could finish speaking, the invisible sharp blade chopped off his head with a chi sound. I told you not to move, but you don't seem to understand what I said. Chapter 998. With a chi sound, fresh blood splattered and a head fell to the ground. Even his soul had been shattered by Xiao Yan. However, in the blink of an eye, before the people present could recover, even the 4 elite Do Di beside Xiao Yan had not completely recovered from the words spoken a moment ago. However, that Grandmaster Jin's head had already been separated from his body. He was dead to the point where he could not be any more dead. After which, when everyone recovered, the expression on their faces instantly became one of shock. It was likely that no one present would have thought that Xiao Yan would actually dare to kill Grandmaster Jin, when he clearly knew that the latter's identity was related to the repair of the ship. Did this not directly confirm what Grandmaster Jin had said earlier? By killing him, Xiao Yan would definitely become everyone's target. Such a crazy action was really difficult for people to imagine that he would actually still insist on killing. This brat. Has he gone crazy? By the side, the yellow-robed old man who had spoken earlier also had a face of disbelief as he looked at Xiao Yan who was in front of him. He really did not dare to believe that the latter had actually killed Grandmaster Jin. Moreover, it was under the situation where he had already spoken first and advised against it. Brat, Jean Luan's character is indeed a little domineering. However, what Deacon Huang said earlier is also right. Once he dies, the repair of the ship will definitely be delayed. We cannot afford to wait for this time. Don't tell me that you want to take responsibility for this? This, mister, your actions are indeed what we have always wanted to do. However, Deacon Huang is right. If you kill him now, it is equivalent to delaying the journey of so many of us. Mister, you cannot afford to take responsibility for this matter. Very quickly, dissatisfied discussions were emitted from the crowd. Numerous gazes that were filled with anger landed on Xiao Yan. Once Grandmaster Jin died, the repair of the ship would definitely be affected. These people had bitterly waited in the city for a few days or even 10 days to half a month. Now that they were once again affected because of Xiao Yan, it would be strange if they did not direct their anger onto Xiao Yan. Subsequently, the 4 elite Do Di beside Xiao Yan also looked at him with gloomy expressions. The delay of the ship's repair was not only a loss to the pedestrians but also a huge loss to Ryuzawa Square. Therefore, Xiao Yan in front of them could be said to have affected not only the pedestrians but also Ryuzawa Square. Mister, please make a trip with us to Ryuzawa Square to meet the chairman and explain this matter clearly. Huang Quan said in a low and deep tone. He raised his large hand and grabbed at Xiao Yan's shoulder. Now that Grandmaster Jin was already dead, he could not allow this black-robed young man in front of him to escape for any reason. Don't tell me that your Ryuzawa Square invites people in this way? The moment Huang Quan made his move, Xiao Yan also frowned. Immediately, he let out a cold snort. His body shook and a powerful aura immediately surged out. The enormous strength forced the 4 people around him to take a few steps back. Shock immediately surfaced on their faces. They did not expect that this black-robed young man in front of them would actually possess such a powerful strength. Attack together. We must not let him continue. The 4 of them exchanged glances with each other. Soon after, their feet stomped on the ground in unison. Their bodies immediately shot forward. In the blink of an eye, they had already appeared beside Xiao Yan. Each of them extended their hands and grabbed at Xiao Yan's body. For 7-star Do Di. Under normal circumstances, this could indeed be considered quite a strong faction. However, in front of the current Xiao Yan, they were still far from enough.
All of you are really going all out.
Xiao Yan's eyes turned cold.
His gaze swiftly swept over the four of them. With a wave of his large sleeve, Do Qi agglomerated.
The soft sleeves immediately became as hard as steel.
At the same time, they smashed into the chests of the two old men with lightning-like speed.
Although the strength was not enough to seriously injure them, it was enough to send them flying.
Bang bang!
The moment a low and deep collision sound appeared, the remaining Huang Quan and the other old man were actually struck once again. The speed of the 4-7-star Do Di appeared to be so unbearable in front of Xiao Yan.
In the blink of an eye, the four of them had been defeated by Xiao Yan one after another.
Humph, that fellow from earlier only has himself to blame. If all of you do not know what's good for you, don't blame me for being vicious. Xiao Yan's ice-cold gaze swept over the four miserable-looking people on the ground. He continued to stand with his hands behind his back.
However, the aura that seeped out from his body was something that no one dared to underestimate. The hearts of these four old men were shaken by the great strength that Xiao Yan had displayed. However, they did not dare to make any movements behind him.
The fate of that Grandmaster Jean from earlier was still in front of their eyes. On top of feeling helpless, they could only quietly complain in their hearts. This Grandmaster Jean was used to being overbearing. Now, not only had he harmed himself, but he had also implicated Ryuzawa Square. As for the surrounding passers-by, although they already had a grudge against Xiao Yan for killing Grandmaster Jean, their hearts were also filled with fear after seeing the frightening strength that Xiao Yan had displayed. They did not dare to act recklessly. However, at this moment, Xiao Yan, who was standing on the street, suddenly turned around. His brows were tightly knit together.
A pair of eyes that were filled with a dense white flame once again looked behind him.
A golden-robed human figure stood in the sky.
An enormous spiritual pressure descended upon the sky above the city.
The frightening aura caused the expressions of everyone in the city to change. Only Xiao Yan revealed an unresigned expression on his face. The people who had come one after another had already exhausted what little patience he had. If this person did not know what was good for him and continued to attack, he would not mind teaching him a lesson. With Xiao Yan's current strength, as long as the other party was not an origin transformation expert, Xiao Yan would not be afraid even if he was a 9-star Do Di. However, this person's strength was only at the late stage of a 9-star Do Di.
It's actually the owner of Ryuzawa Square.
With Grandmaster Jin's death, the repair speed of the ship has been affected. Naturally, the owner of the ship will not be able to sit still. Looks like someone has already reported this matter to the owner of the ship. The owner of the ship has already advanced to a 9-star Do Di a few years ago. This brat still dares to touch the people of Ryuzawa Square after killing Grandmaster Jean.
I'm afraid that he is going to invite trouble upon himself.
Exclamations immediately sounded around the street when some of the surrounding pedestrians saw this golden-robed human figure. At the same time, the golden-robed man's gaze landed on Xiao Yan below. This young friend, is it you who killed Grandmaster Jean? The calm voice contained both shock and helplessness. He had already expected Grandmaster Jin's fate, but he did not expect it to be at such a time.
What was even more unexpected was that the person who had killed Grandmaster Jean would actually be a young brat.
It's me. Who are you?
Xiao Yan softly asked as he replied with a calm tone.
I am Lu Jin, the owner of Ryuzawa Square. You have killed Grandmaster Jean. This is no small matter. As such, I hope that young friend can give Ryuzawa Square and all the passengers of the ship an explanation for this matter. Lu Jin's gaze paused on the latter as he descended. He glanced at Huang Quan's group of four and a shock involuntarily flashed across his eyes. He did not expect that the black-robed young man in front of him was actually able to block Huang Quan's group of four by himself. This was really unbelievable. Chapter 999. Explain? How do you want me to explain? Narrowing his eyes, Xiao Yan asked in a neutral tone. I don't want to make things difficult for you. I just hope that you can compensate all the passengers here and Ryuzawa Square's economic losses. Lu Jin opened his mouth and Xiao Yan quickly followed suit.
How much?
10,000 low-grade spirit stones, or 1,000 mid-grade spirit stones.
Wow!
As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's expression changed. Lu Jin's demand was really exorbitant. However, when everyone thought about it, it was understandable.
There were many passengers on the ships in Beijun City, and Ryuzawa Square was the largest force that managed the ships. Now that Xiao Yan had killed Master Jean, the ships would be affected, and the passengers in the city would also be implicated. To be honest, 10,000 spirit stones was not a lot. However, to ask Xiao Yan to take out 10,000 spirit stones alone was a bit too much. Slowly shaking his head, Xiao Yan decisively rejected the other party's request. He killed Master Jean because his actions were too extreme. As for the benefits of these people, he never thought about it, and there was no need to think about it. Xiao Yan was neither close nor acquainted with these people. Why did he need to consider their interests? It was because he thought that if this matter were to happen to them, how would these people consider his feelings? If these people were like this, the Dragon Pool Square was even more so. Xiao Yan did not owe anyone anything. These people also did not have any reason to accuse him of owing anyone anything. The reason why they would say this was merely because of the benefits in their hearts. Even if there were really a couple of people who had a greater influence, Xiao Yan would similarly not bother about them. What happened today could happen at any time in the continent. Could it be that those who caused all of this had to pay the price? The weak were prey to the strong. That was the rule of this world. There was no right or wrong here. Only the strong had the right to choose. Right now, this choice was in Xiao Yan's hands. Lu Jin in front of him did not have the ability to change anything. However, just as Xiao Yan chose to reject the person in front of him, a voice came out from his body. Lu Jin's eyes flickered slightly. Lu Jin, who was standing in front of him, furrowed his brows tightly. What had happened today could be said to have a huge impact on his Dragon Pool workshop. If he did not take action to control it, it would definitely attract criticism in the future. However, if he took action, he was afraid that he would leave behind a bad reputation of bullying the weak. After thinking for a while, Lu Jin frowned and spoke to Xiao Yan again. Young friend, I don't want to make things difficult for you, but this matter is very important. 10,000 spirit stones is the biggest forgiveness. Of course, if you really can't take out 10,000 spirit stones, if you can find a third-order formation array master as well as Master Jin's. Master Jean was already one of the few formation array masters around Northern Military City. Because he had helped Ryuzawa Square repair ships for many years, he knew how important Ryuzawa Square was to Ryuzawa Square. Therefore, the latter did not fear him in Northern Military City. Now that Master Jean was dead, where was he going to find a third-order formation array master? Of course, even Lu Jin himself held a trace of hope towards this request. Unfortunately, until the end, Xiao Yan still shook his head with a calm expression. I don't know where to find a third-order formation array master. Lu Jin's face instantly turned ugly. Since there was no third-order formation array master, he could only choose to use force. Ryuzawa Square's reputation could not be damaged because of this. Otherwise, no formation array master would be willing to help them in the future. However, I do know where to find a fifth-order formation array master. However, just as Lu Jingang was about to become furious, the words that continued to be spat out from Xiao Yan's mouth caused him to be instantly stunned like a wooden chicken. An expression of disbelief immediately surged into his eyes. Even the passers-by who heard Xiao Yan's words widened their eyes and mouths. They stared at Xiao Yan with a dumbfounded expression. The shock in their hearts was no less than the former's. You, sir, are you serious? It was only after a long while that Lu Jin asked in disbelief. This was exactly what the passers-by wanted to say. Huh? Xiao Yan smiled faintly. With a thought, the white flames in the depths of his eyes quickly disappeared. What replaced it was a milky white color. Xiao Yan's own aura quickly faded and turned into a powerful yet somewhat unfamiliar aura. This was Xiao Xian. At this moment, the person who was controlling this body was undoubtedly Xiao Xian. Almost at the same time that the flames dissipated, an incomparably vast soul power surged out of Xiao Yan's body and turned into an invisible energy storm that swept through the city. Bas! Immediately, everyone in the city who felt this spiritual pressure felt dizzy. Even the expression on Lu Jin's face changed. He never thought that the fifth-order formation array master that the black-robed young man in front of him was actually himself. This fifth-order soul power. Fifth-order formation array master. The shock in his heart was uncontrollable. As he said this, Lu Jin's breathing became a little shaky. The shock in his heart could not be expressed with words. Is this explanation enough? Xiao Yan's indifferent voice came out of his mouth.
As soon as he finished speaking, the person in front of him instantly came back to his senses. Then he hurriedly cupped his hands respectfully to Xiao Yan and hurriedly said, "Master, you must be joking. With your status, killing a mere Gene Xian is nothing. Naturally, there is no need to talk about an explanation. I spoke abruptly earlier. I hope you don't blame me."
Although he was a fourth-order formation array master, Lu Jin did not dare to have any temper in front of a fifth-order formation array master. Even the words that he had said earlier were now shamelessly taken back.
What a joke.
The other party was a fifth-order formation array master with an extraordinary status. He might even be a consecrator of some large force. If he offended him, even Ryuzawa Square would not be able to bear the consequences. However, the thing that caused suspicion to quietly form in Lu Jin's heart at this moment was that the Xiao Yan in front of him appeared to have suddenly become a different person. The aura all over his body had become strange and long. However, due to the latter's great strength, he did not dare to make any wild guesses.
"Humph, the first step and then the second, the thought of it makes me laugh," Lu Jin said coldly. Hearing this, Lu Jin hurriedly smiled awkwardly and accompanied him. "I'm not here to laugh at you. I just want to know where the ship I want to take is." Lu Jin was stunned.
Then, he hurriedly gestured to Xiao Yan and said respectfully, "The ship is currently in the process of repairing the ship's repair.
The ship is currently being repaired at the port at the north gate of the city. I hope that Grandmaster can lend us a hand. I believe that the damage to the ship can be repaired very quickly. Of course I can help you repair the ship, but in return..." Xiao Yan's words once again made Lu Jin speechless.
Repairing the ship would allow him to enter the North Sea sooner.
Was this not enough to attract him? "Master, if you can repair the ship as soon as possible, it will help your journey. I believe that this ship will be repaired sooner or later. I'm not in a hurry to go to sea. However, I'm afraid that the profit of Ryuzawa Square will decrease a lot because of this. If you don't want to, then forget it." Xiao Yan turned around as he spoke. Lu Jin's expression immediately changed drastically. Since Xiao Yan had already revealed his identity, Lu Jin would definitely invite him back to help. However, this so-called reward caused him to feel somewhat helpless. Lu Jin nodded. He smiled bitterly in his heart. This was probably the former's revenge for his behavior just now. Rolling his eyes, Lu Jin hurriedly stopped Xiao Yan, who was about to turn around. He quickly put on a smile on his face and said, "How about this? In addition to sailing ships, Ryuzawa Square also sells some medicinal materials. If Master is willing, we can use some medicinal materials as a reward." Using medicinal materials used in alchemy as a reward to a formation master. If it were an ordinary person, they would have fallen out long ago. However, this time, Xiao Yan frowned and a hint of displeasure appeared on his face. Lu Jin saw this and hurriedly smiled. In this way, the two of them could be considered to have secretly exchanged blows. However, what Lu Jin did not know was that the fifth-stage formation master standing in front of him was not only a formation master, but also a fourth-stage alchemist. Pills were Xiao Yan's main path. Xiao Yan mocked in his heart. His expression did not change as he snorted softly. Only then did he speak in a somewhat unwilling manner. "Sure, but I want 10 batches of medicinal ingredients." Chapter 1000. Although Xiao Yan's request was high, Lu Jin agreed in the end. After all, as a formation master, even if he took 10 sets of medicinal ingredients, it would still be useless. Of course, this was only Lu Jin's thought. Although the others were suspicious, they did not dare to say anything. Then, under Lu Jin's lead, the two of them quickly arrived at the north gate of Northern Army City, which was also the port where they entered the North Sea. Sure enough, there was a huge ship there, standing there like a giant beast in the sea. The gigantic ship was dark gray in color, and only a small portion of it still had a pure black color. Most of it was covered in extremely eye-catching scars, and those were the proof of the ship's passage of time. The person who added the formation to this ship back then shouldn't be an ordinary person, right? Seeing the mysterious patterns that could still be vaguely seen in some corners of the ship, Xiao Yan's eyes narrowed slightly, and a hint of surprise flashed across the depths of his milky white eyes. Lu Jin's body, which was originally slowly walking forward, paused slightly when he heard this. His gaze followed Xiao Yan's line of sight and immediately saw those mysterious lines. Immediately, his face involuntarily revealed a proud expression as he said with a smile, Don't worry. That was left behind by the first owner of Ryuzawa Square.
He was once a rank 6 formation master, and was a well-known figure in the northern region back then.
Now, all the large ships in Ryuzawa Square have been added by the owner himself. It is because of this that our ships have been able to last until now, but unfortunately. Although his words were full of confidence at the beginning, towards the end, Lu Jin's face gradually revealed a lonely expression. Ever since the first owner of the Dragon Pool Square, there hasn't been a level 6 formation master. The strongest was only a level 5 formation master. It's because of the foundation laid by our ancestors that we've been able to come this far. Unfortunately, even so when it comes to me. Lu Jin fell silent, and so did Xiao Yan. Looking at the shame that flashed across the latter's face, Xiao Yan and Xiao Xian could not help but feel surprised. However, in the end, they did not say anything and walked silently. The two of them boarded the ship one after the other. A few minutes later, they arrived at the core of the ship's central secret room. The spirit stones on the ground emitted a sparkling white light, illuminating the entire secret room. A rich aura of energy filled the entire secret room, and most of the energy in the spirit stones converged into a huge formation that was shining on the floor of the secret room. At this moment, in addition to the spirit stones piled up in the secret room, there were two old men sitting cross-legged. A steady stream of golden light poured out of the two old men's bodies, and poured into the formation under them. The spirit stones were used to maintain the formation's operation, while the golden light was the key to repairing the formation. Because I can't repair the ship's damage alone, I could only invite them. That Jin Xian was originally one of them. Seeing the two of them, Lu Jin immediately explained for Xiao Yan. He could hear a hint of helplessness in the latter's words. Yes, if Lu Jin was a rank 5 formation master, these two old men would not have the chance to sit here. The entrance of Xiao Yan and Xiao Xian immediately disturbed the two old men. The moment the two of them opened their eyes, a small golden light flashed across their eyes. Then, the two of them glanced at Lu Jin, then frowned and looked at the young-looking Xiao Yan. Owner Lu, didn't you go to find Jin Xian? Why did you bring back a kid instead? Don't tell me you dismissed Jin Xian and called a kid to help us. Nonsense. What can a brat who is still wet behind the ears do? The two of them echoed each other, their words full of mockery. Heh, Jin Xian is dead. He can't come anymore. As for him, whether he can be useful or not is not up to you to decide. Moreover, Lu Jin smiled coldly. Although these two were not as domineering as Jin Xian, they were not good people either. Every time he helped them repair the ship, the cost was ridiculously high. He had long had enough of these two. What did you say? Jin Xian is dead? Who has the guts to kill him? Where is the person who killed him? Didn't you catch him? The two old men's expressions changed. Jin Xian was someone invited by Ryuzawa Square. Since he was dead, Ryuzawa Square naturally had to take responsibility. No, I didn't catch him. I invited him. In the name of Ryuzawa Square, I invited this master to help repair the ship. Shaking his head, Lu Jin smiled and refuted the two old men's words. What did you say? You're saying that this little brat who hasn't even grown out his hair is the one who killed Jin Xian? How is that possible? Boom. However, this time, the instant the old man cursed, an extremely terrifying spiritual pressure instantly filled the entire dark room. The two old men, who were sitting cross-legged, actually did not have the slightest time to resist as they lay face to face on the ground. The two of them were fiercely pressed against the array. Their entire old faces became abnormally distorted. At the same time, endless fear instantly surged into the old man's heart. If you dare say another word, I will tear your tongues apart. Xiao Yan's calm voice was filled with an overbearing strength. The two old men immediately used their indistinct voices to forcefully respond. Only when the pressure pressed the two of them until they were unable to breathe did a thought pass through Xiao Yan's mind. He withdrew the spiritual strength that he had unleashed. After which, the two old men finally climbed to their feet while their hearts were filled with fear. They hurriedly knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Xiao Yan as they admitted their mistakes. Lu Jin, who was beside Xiao Yan, saw all of this with his eyes. His heart repeatedly laughed coldly. At the same time, the words that Xiao Yan had given him earlier echoed in his heart. Kneel first and bow second. Thinking about it makes one laugh. It had to be said that this sentence was suitable for most people.
Haha, Grandmaster, next, we will rely on you to help us repair the formation on the ship.
Seeing this, even Lu Jin's attitude toward Xiao Yan became even more respectful. The latter nodded slightly upon hearing this and sat down according to Lu Jin's instructions. The two old men hurriedly followed behind Xiao Yan.
Soon after, the four of them entered a state of mind and began to slowly repair the formation under them using some special formation techniques.
This time, with the addition of a rank 5 formation master like Xiao Yan, the speed at which the formation was repaired was undoubtedly much faster. While Lu Jin was pleasantly surprised, Xiao Yan, who had already handed over control of his body to Xiao Xian, also heaved a sigh of relief. Chapter 1001. The next day. After a whole day of joint repairs, Xiao Yan's ship was finally repaired. As a result, the ship could set sail today. This was great news for both Ryuzawa Square and Xiao Yan. After this, Lu Jin fulfilled his promise and gave Xiao Yan 10 sets of medicinal ingredients for refining the elixir. These 10 sets of medicinal ingredients were the ingredients needed to refine the embryonic phoenix elixir. This was also the last elixir that Xiao Yan had promised Xinggan. The trip to the North Sea would take at least 3 to 5 months. Within this period of time, Xiao Yan would be able to refine the embryonic phoenix elixir. Despite not knowing what kind of medicinal pill it was, Lu Jin's old face involuntarily twitched violently when he saw Xiao Yan take away 10 sets of medicinal ingredients needed to refine the embryonic phoenix pill. Even with Lu Jin's character, he did not know what kind of medicinal pill it was. Just by seeing those precious medicinal ingredients being unceremoniously swept away, Lu Jin's old face involuntarily twitched violently. He grimaced in pain. Helping Ryuzawa Square repair the ship not only brought forward the date of his departure, but also allowed him to obtain 10 sets of medicinal ingredients for refining the embryonic phoenix elixir. It could be said that he had made a huge profit. As for Ryuzawa Square, although the medicinal ingredients seemed precious, it was not difficult for them to guess that these 10 sets of medicinal ingredients were just a drop in the ocean for them. Moreover, the ship repair would bring them the most profit. Just one round trip on the ship was enough to earn everyone in Ryuzawa Square a lot of money, let alone several ships going out to sea at the same time. In comparison, the medicinal ingredients were nothing. After receiving the medicinal ingredients, Xiao Yan boarded the ship with a burning heart. He could not wait for this moment. With regards to the North Sea and the so-called Beihai College, Hai Machin was already a little impatient. As the original body of Hai Machin's sea heart flame, not only could it help him increase his cultivation, the other part of the flame mantra in his hands was also something that Xiao Yan had been looking forward to for a long time. Other than this, there was also a slight throbbing deep within Xiao Yan's heart. For some unknown reason, he felt that he would likely obtain an unexpected gain during this trip to the Northern Sea. The passengers in the city also swarmed over when they boarded the ship. After paying countless spirit stones as the price, there were only 100 people who boarded the ship in the end. Even these people had to pay a huge price to board the ship. The ship began boarding in the morning. Only at noon did it officially leave the harbor and turn into the sea. Thus, Xiao Yan's journey to the Northern Sea officially began. At almost the same time, in the western region, after several months, Yiluatian's group finally made their move again. In a certain natural valley within the western wastelands, there were numerous pavilions and pavilions. The valley was lush and verdant, and spring water gurgled, transforming into a small stream that encircled the inside of the entire valley. Green smoke curled up into the air above the pavilions, causing this place to have a dreamlike feeling. This valley was actually like a hidden paradise. From time to time, figures could be seen walking between the pavilions. Although their clothes were simple, the aura that they invisibly gave off made one not dare to underestimate them. In this place, even the most ordinary person had an extraordinary cultivation. Chi! At the entrance of the valley, accompanied by the sound of something breaking through the air, several figures quickly stepped into the place. Almost at the same time, the originally relaxed figures in the valley immediately revealed a vigilant expression on their faces. They looked at each other, and in the blink of an eye, they had already disappeared into the darkness. These people's movements were especially nimble. No matter how one looked at them, they did not look like ordinary villagers. Instead, they looked like a well-trained army. No need to be nervous. It's us. At the entrance of the valley, two figures stepped forward first. The person in the lead spoke in an indifferent voice. Immediately, the people in the valley relaxed. At this moment, the person who had spoken was Yan Hua, who had originally been by Qin Yun's side. The one standing beside him was undoubtedly Yen Lai. Besides the two of them, there were two other people following behind them. One of them was the sect master of the Withered Leaf sect, Yiluotan. The other person was a fellow whose entire body was covered by a black robe. His face could not be clearly seen. The two of you go in first. When the time is right, we will enter.
The indifferent voice carried a trace of an order.
Hearing this, Yen Hua and Yen Lai immediately nodded respectfully.
Soon after, the tip of their feet tapped on the ground, and their figures turned into streaks of light, disappearing in the blink of an eye. The corners of Yi Luotian's mouth slowly lifted into a smile as he watched the two of them disappear in front of his eyes. His gaze swept around the valley in front of him, while ridicule continuously sounded in his heart. As the overlord faction of the Western region, you are actually willing to hide in this small valley. The so-called seclusion is complete nonsense. From today onwards, I want your Qin Wasteland Maze Valley to once again dominate the Western region. Qin Shua, you should thank me. Hee. A sinister and strange laughter lingered around the two of them.
Soon after, the surrounding environment quickly regained its calmness.
The other people in the valley did not pay much attention to the two of them as they continued to busy themselves.
Half an hour later, a loud bang was emitted from the depths of the valley. The entire valley suddenly trembled, while the expressions of everyone in the valley changed drastically. Numerous gazes simultaneously looked towards the deepest part of the valley.
At the same time, Yiluotan, who was at the entrance of the valley, parted his mouth into a smile. He glanced at the black-robed person beside him and nodded.
Soon after, his body moved, transforming into a streak of light.
In the blink of an eye, he had already appeared in the air above the valley.
Who dares to trespass into the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley? Immediately, an order was transmitted from all over the valley.
It was like a loud and clear bell that reverberated within the valley.
It was quite imposing. At the same time, several powerful auras swept outwards, pressuring Yiluotian and Yiluotian in the air. I am the sect leader of the Withered Leaf sect, Yiluotian. I have come to pay a visit to the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. With a cold laugh, Yiluotian's forward-flying figure did not pause at all. As the words left his mouth, he transformed into an invisible energy wave that easily broke the surrounding pressure.
Soon after, under the shocked gazes of everyone in the valley, he and the black-robed person beside him entered the deepest part of the valley in a flash.
That was the place where Yen Hua and Yen Lai had entered earlier. At the same time, it was also where the Valley Master of the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley was located. Chapter 1002. Northern Region, Northern Sea. On the third day after the ship entered the Northern Sea, Xiao Yan, who was sitting cross-legged in an independent room, slowly opened his eyes. After training for 3 days, Xiao Yan had already adjusted his body to its peak condition. At this moment, it was time to prepare to refine the embryonic phoenix pill. The embryonic phoenix pill was a rank 4 medicinal pill. Its quality was ranked high among rank 4 medicinal pills. Naturally, there would be some trouble when refining it.
During this process, if one could adjust one's body to its peak condition, it would undoubtedly be able to provide some assurance when refining the medicinal pill.
A thought passed through Xiao Yan's mind as he sat cross-legged on the bed. His spiritual strength immediately spread out and probed the current situation on the ship. At this moment, other than the 2 initial 9-star Do-D experts sent by Ryuzawa Square to protect the ship, there were 5 8-star Do-D and over 10 7-star Do-D. The rest were all below 6-star Do-D. This kind of team could be considered powerful. After withdrawing his spiritual strength, Xiao Yan flicked his finger and the heavy Luo Tian cauldron immediately landed in front of him. An ancient aura filled the room, causing one's mood to become calm. Using the Luo Tian cauldron to refine pills could increase the refining speed to a certain extent and increase the success rate. With the Luo Tian cauldron, refining the embryonic phoenix pill would naturally be much easier. As the heavenly flame rose within the medicinal cauldron, the interior of the green-gold medicinal cauldron immediately lit up. Following which, Xiao Yan waved his sleeve and medicinal ingredients flew out from the storage ring. Under the control of Xiao Yan's spiritual strength, they were thrown into the medicinal cauldron. Under the frighteningly high temperature of the bone-chilling flame, they began to rapidly refine. This refinement lasted for 2 months. Time was like quicksand between one's fingers, quietly passing by. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had already passed. Xiao Yan, who had been sitting in the room for a long time,
saw that the originally fresh medicinal ingredients in the medicinal cauldron in front of him had all disappeared without a trace. Instead, they had condensed into a spinning round pill. Within the medicinal cauldron, waves of pill fragrance were emitted. After consuming 2 sets of medicinal ingredients, the embryonic phoenix pill was finally refined. Now, it had reached the final stage before the pill was collected. After a while, the embryonic phoenix pill would be completed. Rumble. Suddenly, the sound of thunder reverberated in the sky above the azure sea. The sky changed color, and in the blink of an eye, the originally clear sky was covered by a mass of dark clouds. The entire world suddenly became dark, and the ship that was originally slowly sailing on the sea also stopped at this moment. The sudden change in the weather forced them to stop the ship and wait for the storm to pass. Everyone standing on the deck could not help but raise their heads. Their eyes were bewildered as they looked at the thunderclouds that had suddenly condensed in the sky. Most of their faces revealed a grave expression. Some of the experts who were in their houses also walked out of their houses because of the activity in the outside world. Their eyes were bewildered as they looked at the sky.
What's going on? These don't look like ordinary dark clouds. Feeling the terrifying aura emanating from the thundercloud, the people on the ship couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Some of them had even guessed what this strange thundercloud was. Is this pill lightning? Could it be that someone is refining pills on the ship? Everyone's eyes suddenly turned when these words were spoken. There was both bewilderment and excitement. The pill lightning had condensed. This meant that the medicinal pill had already been refined. This involuntarily caused some of the people on the ship to have evil thoughts. Now that the pill lightning had already been condensed, it was like riding a tiger. That mysterious alchemist would definitely take action to resist the pill lightning. The gap in between was the best opportunity for them to snatch the medicinal pill. Such a good opportunity was something that some desperados would definitely not miss.
Chi! Suddenly, the sound of rushing air appeared on the ship.
A human figure rushed out from a house below in a ghost-like manner. In the blink of an eye, it appeared in the sky. From the looks of it, it was Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan stood in the air with his hands behind his back.
His eyes swept over the people standing on the deck below.
Immediately, he raised his head and stared at the pill lightning in the sky.
The corners of his mouth were slowly lifted into an arc as he sensed the powerful destructive aura that surged out from it.
Ha ha, I have been waiting for you. Currently, his golden elephant skill was still some distance away from mastering. The appearance of the pill lightning today might just be able to help him make up for this gap. Chi chi chi. While Xiao Yan's body was standing in the sky, a couple of rushing wind sounds were quickly transmitted over. Over a dozen human figures swiftly surrounded Xiao Yan in the sky within a 100-meter radius of him. A piercingly cold expression surfaced on Xiao Yan's face when he saw the greedy expressions on their faces. He had already expected the current situation. There would always be some people in this world who could not help but attack because of greed. The best way to deal with such people was to teach them a lesson in blood. Although these dozen people had surrounded Xiao Yan, none of them attacked. They were all waiting for the moment the pill lightning descended. As long as the pill lightning descended, Xiao Yan would not have the time to bother about them. They would also be able to use this opportunity to snatch the medicinal pill that was still in the medicinal cauldron. Xiao Yan ignored these people. He continued to raise his head. His pair of rippleless eyes contained some disdain. He coldly laughed in his heart as he quietly waited for the pill lightning to descend. 2 middle-aged men stood at the top of a building at a certain spot on the ship. The expression on their faces, which were originally frowning as they looked at Xiao Yan, involuntarily changed. They had originally planned to intervene and stop the dozen-plus elite Do D. However, the 2 of them had clearly seen the faint cold smile that flashed across the corner of Xiao Yan's mouth. Immediately, the thoughts in the hearts of the 2 of them were suppressed. Rumble! Faced with Xiao Yan's provocative eyes, the cluster of thunderclouds actually appeared to have come alive. It suddenly churned intensely. The earth-shaking rumbling thunder repeatedly sounded. Frightening thunderbolts that were filled with a destructive aura would occasionally emerge from the thunderclouds. The frightening aura merely flashed past, but it still caused the hearts of everyone below to tremble. The pill lightning that was attracted by a Tier 4 medicinal pill was really becoming increasingly frightening. Even an elite Do D would feel a fear in his heart. It was difficult to imagine just how frightening the pill lightning that was attracted by an even higher tier medicinal pill would be. Bang! At a certain moment,
Just when the rumbling sound within the thunderclouds was about to disappear, an earth-shaking thunderbolt that was 1,000 feet long suddenly shot out from the thunderclouds. It carried a world-destroying strength as it violently hacked down toward Xiao Yan, who was quietly waiting below. At this moment, the expressions of the elite Do-Di standing on the deck below involuntarily changed. Numerous solemn gazes stared intently at the frightening thunderbolt that was swiftly descending from the sky. The Do-Chi within the vortexes within everyone's bodies also involuntarily surged out. They agglomerated into energy barriers of different colors on the surface of their bodies. At the same time, the two middle-aged men a short distance away also quietly circulated the Do-Chi within their bodies. They would immediately intervene if the situation was not right. Almost at the same time, the dozen-plus elite Do-Di surrounding Xiao Yan also flashed their bodies. Their faces carried a fiery heat as they charged toward Xiao Yan's house below. Chapter 1003. Soon after, Xiao Yan suddenly clenched his hands into fists the instant that the earth-shaking thunderbolt descended. A frightening force wildly agglomerated in his palms. His feet stomped heavily on the empty air and the invisible space under his feet immediately collapsed. At the same time, Xiao Yan's body suddenly shot forward. In the blink of an eye, he had already appeared directly under the thunderbolt. A fist was thrown out heavily to meet the pill lightning. Everyone below who witnessed this scene held their breaths and focused their attention. They focused all their attention on Xiao Yan and the thunderbolt. Such an earth-shaking pill lightning was something that even some of the best among them had to be careful when dealing with. At the same time, those 10-plus elite Do-Di had also landed around the house that Xiao Yan was in at this moment. They were about to forcefully barge in. Bang! An earth-shattering collision sound suddenly rang out, and a terrifying energy wave swept out from the point of collision between the fist and the pill lightning. The ear-piercing energy explosion repeatedly reverberated beside everyone's ears. The originally calm surface of the sea below began to churn intensely because of it. Soon after, the people on the deck raised their heads and looked over. Their faces involuntarily revealed a shocked expression. That thunderbolt with a shocking momentum had actually been forcefully shattered by Xiao Yan's punch. The 1,000-foot-large thunderbolt in the sky suddenly shattered, transforming into a countless number of light spots that swiftly scattered. At the same time, the enormous thunderbolt strength had already poured into Xiao Yan's body. Under the wrapping of the heavenly flame, it roamed all the muscles in Xiao Yan's body.
Haha, awesome. Again.
Xiao Yan parted his mouth and laughed out loud as he sensed the waves of piercing pain that were transmitted from all over his body.
He raised his head and looked arrogantly at the cluster of thunderclouds in the sky. His feet heavily stepped on the empty air and his body immediately shot to the sky. Bang, 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 bang. At the same time, a wave of muffled collision sounds appeared on the ship below. The 10-plus elite Do-Di who had charged into the house a moment ago were easily thrown out by a frightening strength. Among these people, even someone with a cultivation as strong as a 7-star Do-Di was ultimately mercilessly thrown out. Immediately, the gazes of everyone on the deck once again shifted. Those elite Do-Di who had been thrown out all lay on the ground with swollen red faces. Their mouths were painfully moaning. This also caused the expressions of the others to change. Their hearts involuntarily felt surprised. There were actually other experts in that room? After the last person flew out of the room in a miserable manner, a human figure quickly followed and stepped out of the room. He swept his eyes over the person in front of him who wanted to attack again. His eyes suddenly turned cold. At the same time, his nose emitted a cold snort. His body flashed and appeared in front of that person in a ghost-like manner. Without any hesitation, he turned his body and kicked that person's chest. A frightening force immediately erupted like a flash flood and surged into the body of the person in front of him in an unstoppable manner. At the same time that a muffled sound was emitted, the latter's body also flew out. Following which, he heavily smashed onto the ground and was unable to get up. After finishing off an elite Do-Di with a kick, the human figure stood proudly in front of everyone. His hands were placed behind his back as his gaze swept over those people lying on the ground at this moment. Immediately, the couple of elite Do-Di, who were about to get up, hurriedly lay on the ground in a panic. They did not dare to move. His sharp and overbearing methods and powerful strength had really caused them to be scared out of their wits. After which, the human figure flashed back to the door of the room and guarded the medicinal pill inside. Only at this moment did everyone on the deck a short distance away clearly see the latter's appearance. Their faces immediately revealed a shocked expression.
The latter's appearance was actually exactly the same as the black-robed man in the sky. This was the result of the 9 avatars merging into one. An intermediate 7-star Do-D who possessed nearly half of Xiao Yan's fighting strength was completely fearless against anyone below the intermediate 8-star Do-D level. Unfortunately, the strongest person among these 10-plus elite Do-D was merely a 7-star Do-D. Oh, no wonder he is so fearless. There is actually another twin brother guarding the medicinal pill. That's not right. Although this person's aura is powerful, his body is not an absolute entity. Instead, it seems to be agglomerated from energy. This is probably some kind of Do technique that can agglomerate avatars. Not far away, the 2 middle-aged men who had been observing all of this had similarly turned their gazes to the second Xiao Yan, who had appeared. After some careful observation, the 2 of them immediately recognized the essence of the latter.
TSK. Avatar ha. It is actually able to raise its cultivation to such a level. This Do technique is likely quite extraordinary.
Soon after, the faces of the 2 involuntarily revealed a shocked expression.
Their mouths also let out a sigh.
Being able to possess half of the fighting strength of the original body, this kind of avatar could be said to be extremely powerful.
This group of people actually have the delusion of having thoughts of snatching his medicinal pill. Hey, if this brat wants to kill someone, it is likely that they won't even have the chance to attack.
TSK.
While Xiao Yan's avatar on the ship below was displaying its great strength, the Xiao Yan in the sky was also violently colliding with the thunderbolts time and time again. The dozens of intense collisions caused a portion of Xiao Yan's body to become a little numb. Even his attacking action had become a little sluggish.
Moreover, there were traces of fresh blood hanging from the corner of his mouth.
All of this was because of this pill lightning. However, Xiao Yan not only did not show any signs of being defeated under the dozens of attacks from the pill lightning, but he was instead in high spirits. The blood in his body appeared to have been ignited and all the strength in his body was completely unleashed. His completely red and numb hand trembled slightly. Threads of electric current passed through his chi paths. His entire arm involuntarily twitched as a piercing pain was transmitted. The corner of Xiao Yan's mouth involuntarily parted.
However, his eyes were still emitting a hot fire.
Ha ha ha, it is indeed worthy of being a world. Not bad again. A thought passed through Xiao Yan's heart as he laughed out loud. Surging Do Qi immediately surged to his arm and removed the numbness. Soon after, both of his hands were swiftly lifted. His 10 fingers moved together and formed a seal. At the same time, the surging Do Qi above his head gathered. Very quickly, it agglomerated into an enormous finger.
Desolation finger.
An explosive cry sounded and the enormous finger immediately shot forward. It violently collided with the frightening thunderbolt that was heading toward him. Soon after, an earth-shaking explosion sounded. The earth-shaking thunderbolt and the desolation finger were both annihilated. Bang bang bang. The continuous collisions lasted for hundreds of rounds, and the thunderclouds in the sky persisted for 4 hours. Finally, the pill lightning scattered. Everyone on the boat below was stunned. On top of being stunned, they also felt an excitement that was difficult to suppress. Using the strength of a single person to contend with the might of the world. Such a pioneering act really caused one's blood to boil. Exclamations sounded from the boat after the final pill lightning scattered. Even the 2 middle-aged men revealed shocked expressions. They looked at Xiao Yan in the distant sky and could not help but sigh in their hearts. It is really the case of the new generation surpassing the old. Look at us. Such a pioneering act is something that even you and I did not manage to accomplish when we were young. Ha ha ha. Chapter 1004. Xiao Yan only descended after the pill lightning in the sky gradually scattered. His body sat on the roof of the house.
A thought passed through his mind and his avatar turned into a ray of light that returned to his body in the blink of an eye. Xiao Yan ignored the surprised gazes of the people on the deck. He raised both of his hands and swiftly formed a seal. Soon after, a golden-colored illusionary figure transformed into a golden-colored giant that rose from the ground behind Xiao Yan. It was the Golden Elephant Mantra. At this moment, the lightning energy in his body had yet to dissipate. Xiao Yan wanted to use this energy in addition to the energy he had absorbed earlier to completely form the Golden Elephant Mantra. As the illusory image rose behind him, the gazes of the people on the deck were once again attracted to Xiao Yan. Immediately, the expressions of many people changed slightly.
Even the two middle-aged men standing on the pavilion could not help but raise their eyebrows. Although the golden illusory image behind Xiao Yan appeared illusory, everyone present could feel a faint pressure from it. This kind of pressure was different from dou qi or spiritual strength. Instead, it was an even more domineering and vigorous aura. Not only does this brat have a powerful dou qi, but he has also cultivated his physical strength to such a frightening level. The most frightening thing is that while he has cultivated these two types of energy to such a level, he also has such shocking attainments in alchemy. I have to say that his cultivation talent is really frightening. On the pavilion, the two middle-aged men looked at each other and saw the dense shock in each other's eyes. At the same time, the thought of roping in the latter rose in their hearts. With such a frightening cultivation talent, even if they could not rope him into their Ryuzawa square, it would be their fortune to be on good terms with him. That's right, before we uploaded it, the owner said that there was a rank 5 formation master on the ship. However, he did not seem to be staying in the room that the owner had chosen for him. Now, we don't know where he is. That's right. It's probably because he's not at ease with us that he found a room for himself. This is also normal. Although this kind of person's spirit is strong, his dou qi cultivation would be somewhat lacking. Perhaps this is also one of his methods of self-protection. The two of them continued to talk. However, one of the middle-aged men suddenly looked suspiciously at Xiao Yan, who was currently sitting cross-legged, and asked doubtfully, "Say, do you think that the array master that workshop owner was talking about is him?" According to the owner of the workshop, that lord seems to be very young. Hearing this, the person beside him frowned. That was indeed the case. The rank 5 formation master that Lu Jin mentioned did indeed look very young. However, in the blink of an eye, he dispelled the suspicion in his heart and shook his head. It shouldn't be. That shouldn't be the case. After all, that lord is a formation master and this young man is an alchemist. Who doesn't know that the Tao of alchemy and the Tao of formations can't be merged into one? Since ancient times, when has there ever been a case where the Tao of alchemy and the Tao of formations could be merged into one? Once these words were said, the suspicion in the former's eyes was greatly reduced. Soon after, when the two of them turned their gazes, they saw that not far behind Xiao Yan, a middle-aged man with blood on the corner of his mouth was quietly approaching Xiao Yan. This person was one of the 10+ elite Dou Di that had been sent flying by Xiao Yan's incarnation. Moreover, from his aura, he seemed to be a 7-star Dou Di. Previously, he did not have the opportunity to hurt Xiao Yan. At this moment, this fellow actually wanted to secretly attack after seeing that Xiao Yan was concentrating on practicing the golden elephant skill. Unfortunately, although Xiao Yan's back was facing him and he could not see it, he was similarly unable to see it. At this moment, there was a thumb-sized black steel needle quietly floating in Xiao Yan's sleeve. However, in the next moment, before that middle-aged man could arrive behind Xiao Yan, the two middle-aged men in embroidered robes on the building moved first. Their bodies were like ghosts as they arrived in front of that person in the blink of an eye. They pressed their hands on the latter's shoulders and a frightening aura spread outwards. Immediately, the middle-aged man was suppressed until he knelt on the building. "Mister, don't tell me that you haven't caused enough trouble for the previous matter?" Their sharp gazes stared at the middle-aged man as a powerful pressure descended on his head. Immediately, an endless amount of fear caused the unwillingness and killing intent in his eyes to disappear. At the same time, the other middle-aged man in embroidered robes had an extremely solemn gaze that landed on Xiao Yan's body at this moment. At this moment, he was merely a few dozen feet away from Xiao Yan. It was also because of this that he could vaguely sense the extremely obscure strength that was transmitted from Xiao Yan's sleeve. It was sufficient to cause him to feel fear in his heart. What a frightening strength. That thing. Just what is it? The middle-aged man's eyes suddenly shrunk. Soon after, he swiftly brought the person who had launched a sneak attack down from the roof with the former. Soon after, the obscure aura that had seeped out from Xiao Yan's sleeve quietly scattered. Only then did the former sigh in relief in his heart. However, the eyes of this middle-aged man in embroidered robes involuntarily revealed a solemn expression when he looked at Xiao Yan. After Xiao Yan withdrew the steel needle, he became even more focused on the formation of the golden elephant skill. Unlike the force elephant skill, which was firm and fierce, the golden elephant skill was a defensive Dou technique. It was able to control and utilize one's physical strength to the greatest extent. In a situation where one did not rely on Dou Qi,
One could use one's physical strength to agglomerate a defensive barrier that had the ability to withstand thousands of tribulations. At the peak of refinement, even some defensive Do techniques could not compare with it. From this, one could see just how overbearing the golden elephant skill was. Now, what Xiao Yan needed to do was to withdraw the golden elephant skill virtual image that had been released from his body into his body, and agglomerate it on the surface of his body to form a protective barrier. From there, he would be able to master the golden elephant skill. Of course, this action could be described as simple. However, it was extremely difficult to actually do it. Xiao Yan needed to perfectly control all of the physical strength in his body. He needed to compress and agglomerate it to the greatest extent. He needed to agglomerate something that did not seem to exist. He needed to agglomerate the purest strength on the surface of his body like Do Qi. It could be said that if one wanted to do this, one would not be able to do it without understanding the physical strength. In order to successfully agglomerate the golden elephant skill, Xiao Yan needed to first have a deeper understanding of his physical strength. He needed to successfully control this thing that was even more illusory and ethereal than Do Qi in his mind. And this process was destined to be slow. However, it seemed that this world did not intend to give Xiao Yan any more time. Just as he was fully focused on practicing the golden elephant skill, a frightening danger was rapidly approaching from below the huge ship. Splash! Suddenly, an earth-shaking wave shot into the sky. The originally calm surface of the sea began to ripple intensely like a pond that had a huge rock thrown into it. The seawater flowed backwards and the sea region where the ship was located actually caved in. At the same time, the surface of the sea once again exploded in front of and behind the ship. Soon after, two ferocious-looking huge sea beasts suddenly charged out from under the water and blocked the ship's path. Damn it! Were these beasts attracted by the pill lightning earlier? Everyone on the ship be alert. Activate the defensive formation. Everyone on the ship, enter battle mode. The two colorful robed men rushed into the sky one after another. A golden light swiftly rose from the exterior of the ship when the loud cry from their mouths sounded. In the blink of an eye, it had already wrapped around the entire ship.